The first thing I did after being reincarnated as a mosquito was to drain the 7-colored dragon egg, which was on the verge of reaching godhood. But just as I was dreaming of ascending to the heavens in a single step, Lu Ruyan inadvertently dripped a drop of her blood contract onto me. My name is Lu Ruyan. In my past life, I was the strongest empress of the human race. I once led humanity to its golden age. Yet, in the end, because the power of my beast-taming contract was too weak, I was besieged by several foreign great emperors, and ultimately perished. This time, upon being reborn, I locked my target onto that god-tier 7-colored dragon egg to forge an insurmountable foundation. But to my utter disbelief, just as I was about to sign the contract, the essence within the dragon egg was drained dry by a mosquito, which led to me accidentally forming a contract with this very insect. Once I regained my senses, I felt as if the heavens and earth had collapsed upon me. I had struggled through reincarnation just to defy the heavens and change my fate. Yet, you start me off by having me form a contract with a mosquito? Are you playing with me? Furthermore, once a contract is formed, it can never be undone. Not only that, but mosquitoes are creatures with extremely short lifespans. If it runs out of life or is crushed by someone, I will suffer the backlash of the contract. At best, I will be severely injured. At worst, I will lose my life. To make matters worse, it possesses no potential whatsoever. Even if I poured an endless amount of resources into it, do you honestly expect a mosquito to evolve into an emperor-tier beast? That is nothing but a delusional fantasy. Meanwhile, I, the one who drained the 7-colored dragon egg, was feeling immensely satisfied. For the moment I finished absorbing the dragon essence, the notification sound of the system rang out. Received 1,000 evolution points. Received god-tier talent. Ultimate evolution. Every time you evolve your life form, you may choose one body part to strengthen. Do you wish to begin evolution immediately? I glanced at Lu Ruyan, whose face was pale with shock, and immediately began the evolution. Even if I were to be crushed, I must finish evolving first. Otherwise, that dragon egg would have been a complete waste. However, Lu Ruyan, standing beside me and witnessing my strange movements, soon hardened her gaze with resolve. In my past life, I reached the pinnacle of the world, never by relying on mere luck, nor by depending on a contract beast, but by relying entirely upon myself. If the path of beast taming has reached a dead end, then I shall switch to traditional martial cultivation. This path may be more arduous and consume more resources, but what of it? I am an empress. With this thought in mind, she lifted me up from her fingertip to gaze directly at me. Listen well. Since you have become my battle beast, you must obey my every command. However, I was currently on the verge of evolution, and my senses were blurred. I could only perceive a young woman speaking coldly. Thus I struggled to focus my consciousness. Woman, stop spouting nonsense and go prepare some high-grade spiritual materials. Once I complete my evolution, I will take you to dominate the world and soar to new heights. But to my surprise, the thoughts I projected were nothing more than a string of incoherent words. I am hungry. I want to eat. Eat, eat, eat. Why don't you just choke on your food and die? She fought to suppress the urge to crush me to death. From now on, you will stay in this cultivation room and are forbidden from leaving. I will provide the bare minimum of blood to keep you alive. But if you dare to fly even one step outside, I will not hesitate to skin you and pull out your tendons. Once Lu Ruyan departed, my evolutionary process finally began. A wave of intense heat surged throughout my entire body. It was so scorching that it caused me immense discomfort. Minutes later, the heat subsided. I looked into a reflection and realized my body had grown significantly in size. Ding. Detected that the host possesses the extreme evolution talent. After this evolution, you may choose one body part to undergo a transformation. Please make your selection. I stared at the attribute panel on the interface, a surge of excitement rising within me. I never expected that my first evolution would multiply all my attributes several times over, and I was only 200 points away from the next evolutionary milestone. The benefits gained from devouring that 7-colored dragon egg were truly immense. It seems I will truly have to repay Lu Ruyan properly in the future. Furthermore, this evolution granted me the skill, Gigantification of Light. If my memory serves me correctly, this is supposed to be the signature skill of the Wu Choman. I immediately decided to test the skill. My body expanded rapidly, growing thousands of times larger in the blink of an eye, filling the entire cultivation room. Moreover, I had a distinct feeling that this was not my true limit. It was merely the limit of this room. After experiencing the skill, I turned my attention back to the system. What was a mosquito's most powerful weapon? A mosquito's proboscis is by nature its inherent source of power. The next moment, that familiar, strange sensation returned once more. I could feel my proboscis heating up. A few minutes later, the enhancement process concluded. The proboscis, which was originally thin and soft, now shimmered with a cold, metallic luster, resembling a miniaturized divine needle. Just then, I received a notification from the system. Because I had enhanced my innate proboscis, my Devoured ability had been directly leveled up. Now not only can I drain blood, but I can even pierce directly through solid objects. Filled with fervor and eager to test my new power, I immediately sought something to experiment upon. I unfurled my wings, soared into the air, and began to survey the cultivation chamber. Having been preoccupied with devouring the dragon egg, I had failed to notice just how opulent this chamber truly was. The walls themselves were constructed entirely from low-grade spirit stones. As I touched the wall, a notification indicated I had gained 1 evolution point, and my heart filled with secret joy. I had not expected this reinforced stinger to be so formidable. With a room filled with so many spirit stones, even if I only gained 0.1 evolution points per bite, it would be more than enough to trigger my next breakthrough. I clung directly to the wall and began to devour it with a frenzied hunger. An hour later, the once smooth surface of the spirit stone wall was riddled with holes like a honeycomb, and a sense of satiety filled my belly. I cast a glance at the system interface. I was only 50 points away from my next evolution. After a moment's thought, I set my sights on the tightly shut spirit stone door and continued my feast. Once the door had been reduced to nothing more than a pile of rubble, I flew out into a long corridor, also inlaid with spirit stone bricks. Without hesitation, I clung to the base of the wall and began to drain everything in my path. While gnawing on the corridor walls, fragments of memory began to surface in my mind. That girl, Lu Ruyan, appears to be a transmigrator, a soul reborn. In her previous life, she was an invincible empress. After her rebirth, she intended to form a contract with the dragon egg. In other words, I have inadvertently devoured her only hope of changing her fate in this life. This forced her to abandon the path of the Beast Tamer, compelling her to tread the far more arduous path of martial arts. However, she has greatly underestimated me. That woman has no conception of the true terrifying potential possessed by this insect. Once I reach maturity, regardless of whether it is a powerful demon or a forbidden realm, I need only strike once to drain them, until they are nothing but shriveled husks. Just as I was caught up in my gluttony, I heard a faint commotion echoing from the other side of the wall. What could be causing such a stir? I shifted my direction, crawling along the crevice toward the source of the noise. Furthermore, I sensed that Lu Ruyan was likely present there as well. I reached the origin of the sound in an instant. Lu Ruyan stood in the center of the grand hall, while the surrounding elders facing her stood an elderly man dressed in luxurious attire, seemingly Wang Qingke of the Lu clan. At his feet stood Ruyan. It is not that I enjoy lecturing you, but the family exhausted countless efforts to help you obtain that destiny-bound spirit beast. Yet look at the result. You turned a god-ranked dragon egg into a common mosquito devoid of spiritual energy. To make matters worse, you now claim that you intend to abandon the path of beast, taming to practice some pathetic martial technique that no one even bothers to learn anymore? You have squandered so many of the family's precious resources. Where does this leave the face of our Lu clan? The patriarch, Liu Qin, spoke from the main seat. Ruyan has her own plans. What has been used is already gone. Wang Qingke let out a cold laugh. Patriarch, I understand your fondness for Ruyan, but surely you cannot be this biased. If those resources had been given to my grandson's tiger, it would undoubtedly become a peak combatant in the future, far superior to throwing them out the window to raise a mere mosquito. The resources were mine to use, and I will bear the consequences myself. Furthermore, beast taming is not the only path to power. Even if I abandon it, I can still become a top-tier expert through martial arts. Wang Feng, the grandson of Wang Xingke, could not help but laugh out loud. Have you lost your mind from the shock? This world belongs to the Beast Tamers. What could a mere martial artist possibly amount to? The small cat beside him let out a roar that caused the great hall to tremble. The surrounding crowd jeered and mocked her even more intensely. Lu Ruyan bit her lip, remaining silent. Standing near I observed the scene, a surge of irritation rising within me. Although this woman is usually cold and distant, she is at the very least my long-term provider of sustenance. Besides, for someone of Wang Qingke's faction, this hand reaches far too deep. Just then I heard the inner thoughts of Lu Ruyan. Wang F, you piece of filth. 3 years from now, in order to secure an official position, you will collude with villains and betray the Lu clan, causing our defensive line to be completely annihilated. 3 elders will fall in battle, over 1,000 clansmen will become prey for wild beasts, and even my father will die a tragic death in the jaws of a tiger. The Lu clan will be completely wiped out. If I had not mastered the great divine art later on, the Lu clan's lineage would have long since ended. If I only had the strength now, I would slap a piece of trash like you to death. Hearing this, I could not help but startle. As an elite youth of Huaguo, I instinctively felt a profound disgust toward this type of traitor. Looking at the contemptible face of Wang Feng and the beast snarling before him, a clever idea immediately took root in my mind. By this time, the family meeting involving Lu Ruyan had nearly concluded. The final decision was that, from this day forward, no more high-grade spirit stones would be supplied to Lu Ruyan. Ruyan, in the past, everyone cherished you like a treasure. But things are different now. From here on, all the resources in the family belong to Fenger. You can continue clinging to that wretched piece of trash. Wang Qingke and his grandson were immensely smug at this moment. Wang Feng, in particular, was in high spirits. Upon returning to his room, he casually retrieved several high-grade spirit stones and a 1,000-year-old ginseng, tossing them before the tiger. Eat, little tiger. Once you become powerful, this Lu family will be under our absolute control. The tiger let out a roar and pounced on the offerings in a frenzy. Wang Feng walked behind a folding screen to change his clothes and prepare for sleep. He had absolutely no idea that in the dark corner of the wall, a small hole the size of a needle had appeared. I observed the situation in the room through that tiny aperture, and upon seeing those spirit stones and the ginseng, my stomach let out a thunderous growl from sheer hunger. Are these truly top-grade spirit stones? They are far superior to gnawing on the crumbling walls of this house. That ginseng smells incredibly nourishing as well, and that oversized cat, it seems to possess a rather robust flow of vitality. I silently crept through the hole, and while the tiger was preoccupied with its meal, I darted forward and sank my beak into another piece of the tribute. Ding. The theft was successful. My attributes have increased. My heart swelled with joy. I had truly stumbled upon a magnificent fortune. I quickly proceeded to consume every shred of the snacks and the pile of spiritual resources. A surge of power radiated throughout my body. My evolution points immediately increased by 1200. Although I was capable of evolving, I did not act immediately, choosing instead to fix my gaze upon the tiger. The beast had just one piece and was preparing to consume the next, only to look up and discover that the pile of high-grade resources had been reduced to nothing but ash. It widened its massive head, wearing an expression of complete bewilderment. When it noticed me perched atop the ashes, cleaning my beak, it let out a roar of pure rage that shook the room. Where did this lowly insect come from, daring to steal my delicacies? Although this tiger was still a mere cub, yet its temperament was far from small. It opened its maw, intent on devouring me. Fortunately, my flight was agile. With a single beat of my wings, I evaded its strike. Does this beast truly dare to show aggression toward me? I dove directly toward it, my proboscis now tempered and sharp as a dagger, plunged deep into the vein on its neck. With a long, deep draft, the tiger's blood filled my belly, draining the essence of the tiger. Evolution points increased by 100, and the tiger let out a miserable shriek. It desperately tried to shake me off, but I clung firmly to its fur. No matter what it did, it could not dislodge me. The more violently it thrashed, the faster its blood flowed out. I glanced at my stats bar's window. With just a little more, I would reach completion. I exerted my strength, draining several more mouthfuls. In less than a minute, the tiger, which had been so majestic and imposing just moments ago, had withered away, its steps now faltering. The gaze it turned toward me had shifted from ferocity to terror. Finally, it let out a whimper and cowered in the corner, trembling like a stray dog. Casting a glance around, I realized everything edible had already been consumed by me. I let out a massive yawn before returning the way I came. On the other side, Lu Ruin was intending to bring me some beast blood. Even though her resources had been cut, her demeanor remained quite stable. However, before she even reached the entrance, her expression shifted instantly. Where has my door gone? She hurried into the room, only to find the interior in ruins, as if it had been gnawed away by some giant insect. Most importantly, that mosquito had vanished. She was struck with sudden terror. This mosquito was now as precious to her as her own life. She searched frantically everywhere, eventually discovering a small, perfectly round hole in the corner of the wall. Could this mosquito actually pierce through this type of reinforced wall? Could this hole truly have been bored through by it? Just as she stood there, anxious and filled with doubt, a buzzing sound echoed through the air. She turned to look and saw a mosquito as large as a fist hovering wobbling as it returned. My size had now doubled compared to before, and my body emanated a faint, dark gold blood-colored light. I cast a glance at her, then found Lu Ruyan looked at my bloated, full belly, torn between laughter and bewilderment. She hurried over to block the hole in the wall, only to realize it led directly into Wang Qingke's courtyard. Her expression turned peculiar. She asked me, "What kind of mischief were you up to just now?" I paid her no mind, focusing instead on preparing for my next feast. She could sense that I was in a state of high excitement, though I was also beginning to feel a bit drowsy. Deciding to let me be, she sat down and began to cultivate. Seeing that she had entered a meditative state, I closed my eyes and silently commanded the system to begin the evolution. No sooner had I spoken than a massive surge of heat erupted within my body. Under the impact of this intense energy, I could feel my entire form being reshaped. My body began to expand once more, the outer shell thickening, until it resembled a suit of armor, and my legs grew immensely powerful. Evolution successful. You may choose one body part to further reinforce. After casting a glance at the attributes on the system interface, I pondered for a moment. I had evolved my mouth last time, so I decided to evolve my stomach this time. Otherwise, a single bite would leave me feeling full. Ding, influenced by the evolution, you have awakened the skill. Particle beam. I was momentarily stunned. How impressive, a true buy one get one free scenario. However, having reached the third stage, I had consumed a massive amount of energy, and my stomach began to growl again almost immediately. My gaze drifted uncontrollably toward Lu Ruyan, finally coming to rest upon her collarbone. I plunged my proboscis in and began to drink greedily, lost in thought as I fed. It could not be helped. I am a mosquito, and blood-sucking is merely my nature. Evolution points increased by 60. Constitution increased by 3. Spirit increased by 2. Hearing the system notification, my eyes lit up instantly. Lu Rian truly lived up to her reputation as a great emperor in her past life. Even after her rebirth, her blood remained extraordinary. To gain so many evolution points from such a small amount of blood was remarkable. And when I noticed Lu Rian beginning to frown in her meditation, did I cease my feeding. My evolution points had reached over 1,500, leaving me just over 300 points away from another evolution. But if I continued to draw blood from Lu Ruyan, I risked waking her from her cultivation. Perhaps it is time I ventured back outside to see what I can find. Thus, I slipped back into the small hole from which I had originally emerged to reach the outside. However, not long after my departure, Lu Ruyan awoke from her cultivation. Finding me missing from the room, she began to search everywhere. Very quickly in Wang Feng's courtyard, she sensed the lingering traces of my aura, and immediately concluded that it was Wang Feng who had abducted me. A chilling, icy aura suddenly erupted from her body as she kicked Wang Feng's main gate off its hinges. Wang Feng, you are tired of living, daring to kidnap my life-bound beast. I tell you, if you dare to harm it, I will kill you today. Wang Feng was left in a daze, completely confused as to what was happening, attempting to explain that he had never done such a thing. But Lu Ruyan refused to believe him, and directly launched an assault against Wang Feng, who scrambled away, clutching his head in panic. Return my life-bound beast to me at once. If you dare withhold it, I will skin you alive. The commotion grew louder, and an increasing number of spectators gathered to watch. Eventually, Wang Qingke and the others heard the noise and rushed to the scene. After understanding the sequence of events, Wang Qingke took the initiative to lower his voice and apologize. Ruin Wang Feng truly did not capture that mosquito of yours. Ever since the meeting concluded, it has remained here in this courtyard. Just as Wang Qingke had spoken halfway through his explanation, a wretched and heartbreaking cry erupted from inside the room, and immediately after, seeing Wang Feng being beaten, his expression shifted, and he charged into the room, emitting a roar filled with grief and indignation. Little tiger, what has happened to you? Do not die on me. Which bastard stole my snacks? I was perched upon a tree outside. I gently fluttered my wings and slipped away quietly, leaving my heroic deeds unknown to all. Seeing this scene, the crowd curiously followed them inside. Lu Ruyan also entered the room, only to see Wang Feng clutching the small tiger, surrounded by complete chaos. The fury in her heart immediately dissipated by more than half. If others did not know what was happening, how could she herself not see it? This was clearly the masterpiece of the mosquito with which I had formed a soul contract. Well deserved. She immediately returned to her courtyard, retreating into her dilapidated cultivation chamber. I drifted back toward my own cultivation room with ease, but upon arrival I found Lu Ruyan waiting for me in a rage. You scoundrel, where on earth have you been causing trouble? I wasted for time worrying that someone had snatched you away. I cast a single glance at her, not deigning to offer a reply. Does she truly believe herself to be so important that I must report my whereabouts to her? I landed comfortably upon a rock and began to enjoy a pleasant nap, a sight that made Lu Ruyan tremble with indignation. Just as she was about to teach me a lesson, she suddenly realized that my aura was at least twice as strong as it had been yesterday. No, it was not merely twice as strong, it was dozens of times more potent. Yesterday she viewed me as nothing more than a mortal mosquito, yet today she saw that I had already reached the 3rd rank. Forget it, it is not worth thinking about. A mosquito is just a mosquito. Regardless of how strong it becomes, how much power could it possibly possess? She then took out a silk handkerchief to wipe her face before placing it into the spirit beast bag hanging at her waist. Because the family had cut off her resources, she realized that if she wished to improve her strength rapidly, she could no longer follow the slow, steady path of the school. She had to find another way. Lu Ruyan headed to school immediately, going straight to the administration building to process her withdrawal. However, she never expected that this process would be met with such deliberate, infuriating obstruction. As soon as she entered, she saw Wang Feng sitting on the sofa with a look of dissatisfaction on his face. Meanwhile, Director Wang of the Academic Affairs Office sat in his chair and asked, "You wish to withdraw?" "Student Liu Ruyan, what do you take this school for? A place you can enter and leave as you please?" Liu Ruyan's expression darkened. It was clear that this grandson, Wang Feng, was seeking revenge, and he had colluded with the Director of the Academic Affairs Office in advance. Director Wang, according to the laws of the Great Xia, any student who fails their awakening or voluntarily chooses to abandon the path of beast mastering has the right to withdraw. I have already filled out the withdrawal form. I ask that you sign and stamp it. That simply will not do. We are currently in the final, critical stage of the 12th grade. If you withdraw abruptly, not only will you forfeit your diploma, but you will also severely undermine the school's discipline. Furthermore, I have heard that because you bonded with a pathetic mosquito, your mental state has become unstable, and you have even assaulted your A student with such abominable conduct, who has also abandoned himself to despair, is an embarrassment to this institution. The headmaster is not only unable to let you withdraw in a dignified manner, but is even considering whether to formally revoke your student status, to set an example for others. Once expelled, Lu Ruyan will face insurmountable obstacles in her future quest to enter a martial arts university. Upon hearing these words, Wang Feng became instantly exhilarated. That is right. A piece of trash like her should have been expelled immediately. From within the spirit beast pouch, I listened to the conversation between the two, my eyes flashing with a cold glint of murderous intent. I exerted a subtle force, effortlessly tearing a small hole in the spirit beast pouch, and with a soft whoosh, I transformed into a small black blur and darted out. With my diminutive stature and immense speed, those present were completely oblivious to my departure. Yet before a spirit stone not far away, two demonic beasts stood guard, occupying the territory, both being third-order peak-stage Earth map snakes. Sensing human presence, the two beasts spewed forth torrents of fierce flames, instantly sealing off Lu Ruyan's path. Lu Ruyan's expression turned grave. Fighting two third-order peak-stage beasts above her own cultivation level was nothing short of courting death. After a brief calculation, she quickly pulled a second-grade flame explosion talisman from her chest, preparing to risk everything in a desperate struggle. But just as she prepared to strike, she heard me roar with excitement, demanding to take action myself. Leave such dirty and exhausting work to me. Following that, I lunged straight toward the raging inferno, and without a moment's hesitation, I let out a thunderous shout. Watch my laser beam. My abdomen suddenly contracted violently, and a beam of light, even more magnificent than before, and dozens of times larger than my entire body, erupted outward with overwhelming force. The wall of flames unleashed by that third-order earth fire snake was, before my laser beam, no match, as futile as pitting a lighter against a wildfire. The beam's power remained undiminished, tearing through the earth for over a dozen meters behind the target, carving a massive crater into the ground. The remaining earth fire snake turned to retreat back into its lair, but it was too late. I closed the distance in a single leap, plunging into its body and beginning to drain its essence. Within seconds, I had drained it to death. Afterwards, I approached the first earth fire snake I had pierced, opened my maw, and drained it until it was nothing more than a withered husk. Ignoring Ruyan, who stood paralyzed in disbelief behind me, I flew straight toward the spirit pool. This pool of spiritual energy was the true treasure of this secret realm. The water shimmered in 5 brilliant colors, manifested from the liquefaction of 5-element spiritual energy. A single draft of this 5-element spirit liquid is enough to cleanse a martial artist's marrow and reshape their very essence. Furthermore, blooming in the center of the pool was the legendary 7-orifice exquisite lotus. By now, Lu Ruyan had regained her composure, her eyes shimmering with a flicker of joy. 2 peak third-order demonic beasts had been obliterated in the blink of an eye. This is wonderful, she thought. With this 7-orifice exquisite lotus, and this entire pool of 5-element spirit liquid, I will surely be able to reconstruct my meridians and break through to the martial master realm in short order. Yet, before her excited words could fade, the radiant smile on her face vanished, and her eyelids began to twitch uncontrollably, for she watched as I, that wretched mosquito, not only reached the spirit pool first, but planted myself directly onto the precious 7-orifice exquisite lotus. I thrust my proboscis straight into the center of the bloom. The 7-orifice exquisite lotus, which had been in full bloom, withered and yellowed at a terrifying speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, with a soft crack, it crumbled and vanished into the wind as dust. Not content with that, before I even let out a burp, I dove headlong into the priceless pool of spirit liquid, acting like a high-powered pump, causing the water level in the pond to drop at a horrifying rate. System notification: devoured the rare 7-orifice exquisite lotus. Evolution points increased by 500. Mental energy increased by 30 points. Devoured rare 5-element spirit liquid. All attributes rising rapidly. Amidst a continuous string of system notifications, in the span of a mere 10 seconds, that priceless pool of spirit liquid had been drained dry by me, not a single drop remaining. Even the layer of silt at the bottom of the pond, which held a faint trace of spiritual energy, I could not bear to waste. Greedy gulps, I consumed every last bit. Lu Ruyan stood frozen in place, as if turned to stone. A surge of fury erupted within her, rushing straight to her head. She pointed a trembling finger at me and unleashed a torrent of rage. "You thick-skinned pest! Have you gone starving mad? That was the supreme treasure meant to restore my meridians. And just like that, it is all gone. It is one thing to steal the meat, but this? Yet you did not even leave a single drop of soup for me." Hearing Lu Ruyan's cursing, I leisurely rose from the bottom of the pond with a round, distended belly, and facing her directly, let out a loud burp reeking of spiritual energy. All the shouting, "I am your life-bound battle beast, am I not? If I have eaten my fill, is it not the same as you having eaten yours? Why bother making such distinctions? Besides, are those 2 snakeskins not still lying over there? That material is both waterproof and remarkably durable. They are high-quality crafting materials, after all. You should gather them up quickly and take them home. Sell them to the scrap merchants in exchange for coin. Upon hearing this, Lu Ruyan was so infuriated that she nearly saw stars, and just as she was about to retort, her vision darkened as she nearly fainted from the sheer frustration I had caused her. After returning to the Hunters Guild in Yun City, Lu Ruyan submitted her report on the Black Wind Valley mission, receiving a large quantity of beast essence blood and several high-density origin stones in return. Over the past few days, she had come to a realization. If she wanted this mosquito to stop plundering her treasures and resources, the only way was to ensure its belly was already completely full. Faced with Lu Ruyan's calculated strategy, I naturally refused none of it, absorbing all of the essence blood into my body, before eventually collapsing onto the table to drift off to sleep. Lu Ruyan meanwhile began to utilize the origin stones she had acquired to commence her cultivation. I do not know how much time had passed, but suddenly, Lu Ruyan successfully achieved a breakthrough in her cultivation realm. Yet no sooner had she emerged from seclusion than the courtyard gate was kicked off its hinges. A young lady of high status named Lin Muxu arrived at the doorstep, her eyes red with tears. Through our soul connection, I managed to piece together fragments of memory from Lu Ruyan's inner thoughts. Lin Muxu, she was a girl of kind and gentle heart, yet within her clan she possessed no voice or authority. This time she had come because her family intended to force her into a political marriage, and the suitor was a man of notorious and degenerate character. She brought several dozen top-grade spirit stones as a gift, but the moment I heard the words top-grade spirit stones, I became instantly alert. I began to calculate in silence. Considering such a generous offering, I, this humble mosquito, would graciously bestow a few stings upon her to offer my assistance. This was a transaction in which I could not possibly lose. After Lin Muxue departed in tears, and while Lu Ruyan was lost in thought, contemplating how to help her friend annul the engagement, I quietly flew toward the pile of top-grade spirit stones. Opening my mouth, I began to drain them of their essence with fervor. When Lu Ruyan finally regained her senses and looked at the pile of spirit stones, they had been reduced to nothing but a heap of dust, with not a single fragment remaining. Witnessing this, Lu Run was instantly driven to fury. "You foul, shameless mosquito. Spit it back out," she cried, while I merely let out a loud, dismissive buzz. I completely ignored her impotent rage, landed upon her shoulder, and continued my slumber, resting peacefully. I estimated that once I had fully digested this surge of energy, my rank would rise. By then, with just a little more energy, I would be able to undergo another metamorphosis into a beast. From there, I would truly take flight. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, and I officially reached the peak of the 3rd rank. Lu Ruyan had also exhausted the resources she had previously gathered, and prepared to head to the Hunters Guild to accept a mission. However, no sooner had Lu Ruyan and I arrived at the guild than we saw an urgent mission being posted. A beast tide had erupted in the Tianrong Ravine, 150 miles from the city. They were urgently summoning all hunters of the 4th rank and above within the city to deploy to the front lines and repel the beasts. In addition to the base mission points, those at the top of the contribution rankings would receive generous rewards from the city lord's estate. As soon as this notice was issued, the hunters became instantly energized. Lu Ruin was no exception. She was in desperate need of resources. While this beast tide carried significant danger, the potential spoils were estimated to be quite substantial, and I too felt a flicker of excitement. Very soon Lu Ruyan brought me to the battlefield. At this moment, the fighting within the ravine was truly gruesome. The vanguard forces were on the verge of being slaughtered by the rampant beasts. Seeing this, I immediately abandoned Lu Ruyan and dove straight toward the rampaging beasts. I locked my sights on a rhinoceros over 3 meters long, lunged forward to sink my proboscis into its hide, and began to drain it, gulping down its essence greedily. In just a few fleeting seconds, the rhinoceros let out a harrowing cry. Its flesh and blood vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but a hide. A soldier nearby witnessed the scene and turned deathly pale, convinced that his own life was nearing its end, but I merely cast a glance at him before lunging straight toward a large tiger nearby. Having just witnessed me drain the rhinoceros dry, the tiger was already trembling in terror, and now, seeing me set my sights upon it, it was instantly struck dumb with dread, nearly collapsing before turning to flee for its life. But it was far too late. With a single flap of my wings, I descended upon the beast, thrusting my proboscis into its body for another intake. A tiger skin slumped to the ground, and as my evolution points reached their limit, I wondered, should I begin the 4th evolution now? My eyes lit up immediately. I had finally met the requirements for evolution. Initiate the evolution. At the very moment I confirmed the evolution, a surge of energy that made the heavens and earth change color erupted suddenly from within my body, radiating instantly with me at the epicenter. The air within a radius of several dozen meters was drained in an instant, and hundreds of spirit beasts were swept into the vortex. Unable to even let out a dying scream, their bodies fractured, turning into blood and bone, which were then absorbed into my own form. More than a minute passed before the chaotic mist slowly dispersed, revealing a giant mosquito over 2 meters in length, its entire body covered in a massive protective layer of armor. Hovering majestically in midair, with proboscis as thick and formidable as a knight's lance, a truly imposing sight. I could clearly sense a terrifying power surging through my evolved body, while my attribute panel had once again skyrocketed. Beyond the power of my particle beam being doubled, I had also comprehended a divine area of effect control skill, capable of exerting a life-suppressing pressure within a range of 100 meters, suppressing all living things. I invite the host to make a choice. The fourth exclusive enhancement module for the ultimate evolution. I choose to enhance my legs. Movement speed increases 3-fold, and explosive jumping power increases 5-fold. I turned my head to glance at Lu Ruyan, who was standing there in stunned disbelief. Do you see? This great one is not inferior to that dragon egg in the slightest, am I? With this great one here, you may secretly rejoice to your heart's content. Yet, at that very moment, I suddenly knit my brows, sensing an eruption of immense energy from within the Chongqing Canyon. Countless spirit beasts and humans were directly crushed to the ground by this force. Lu Ruyan's complexion shifted, her expression turning grave to the extreme. It is a rank 5 spirit beast. I also sensed that pressure, yet I found this aura to be nothing more than mediocre. I then unleashed the field control technique I had just comprehended. A thick dark red aura surged from my body and spiraled straight into the sky, manifesting like a colossal crimson claw, slamming violently toward the direction from which that pressure originated. With a loud boom, I stepped back once, and the spirit beast's pressure dissipated. However, this seemed to have incensed the opponent. A roar echoed through the forest, and a 4-armed demon ape, standing over 10 meters tall, appeared within everyone's line of sight. Its entire body was covered in bulging muscles, and it gripped a giant staff, striking down toward me with ferocious intensity. I did not panic in the slightest. You have come at the perfect time. Today, I shall use you to warm up. I stomped my foot hard, and with a thunderous sound, my 2-meter-tall frame transformed into a streak of white light, crashing directly into the iron-like chains. With a deafening clang, the 10-meter-tall 4-armed demon ape was violently sent flying by my impact. It scrambled to its feet, looking at its own fists, then back at me. To it, I was merely a creature standing 2 meters tall. A flicker of confusion flashed in its eyes, but soon after, its eyes turned bloodshot as it charged again. I was left speechless and shook my head slightly. This beast possesses nothing but raw brute strength. Its intelligence is truly far too low. Very well, let me send you to the afterlife. I opened my mouth, energy surging within my body, and a beam of cyan light several times larger than before fired out in an instant. The space through which it passed warped and distorted as it tore forward. The 4-armed demon ape, previously filled, his face instantly contorted with terror. Just as he attempted to flee, the next moment he was struck by the beam of death. He collapsed to the ground, utterly devoid of life. Following this, I turned my gaze toward Lu Ruyan. At this moment, she bore no resemblance to a graceful lady. Do not just stand there in a daze. Clean up this corpse. It is all worth money. Having said that, I leisurely walked over to the corpse of the 4-armed demonic ape. I plunged my proboscis into the carcass and drained it with a powerful pull. A vast amount of essence surged into my body. Within mere seconds, this 4-armed demonic ape, standing over 10 meters tall, was reduced to a withered husk by my consumption. By now, the surrounding demonic beasts had long since scattered and fled. At the slightest shift of my intent, my form began to shrink. Once I had reduced myself to the size of a common mosquito, I alighted upon Lu Ruyan's shoulder. Let us go, miss. Upon returning to the city, Lu Ruyan sold all the materials and beast cores, acquiring a significant sum of spirit stones. Yet she never anticipated encountering such obstacles when reaching the Hunters Guild to submit the mission. This current wave of the beast tide has truly caused us no small amount of trouble. However, your name is not on the mission registry. Therefore, I cannot process the completion of this mission for you. My apologies, Miss Lu. Please see yourself out. After the vice president finished speaking, he promptly turned Lu Ruyan away. Lu Ruyan stood by the roadside, her expression filled with indignation. I clearly accepted the mission, she thought. Yet that man insists that I did not. Wang Feng must have surely colluded with him. Do you seek vengeance? Wait until I have evolved a few more times. I will help you deal with him once and for all. Yet, unexpectedly, early the next morning, arrogant shouting erupted outside the courtyard. And, you, ungrateful wretch, bring out that beast from your room at once. I have thought this through clearly. My tiger cub and my snacks were definitely the work of that mosquito of yours. I shall make it pay for this blood debt with its own life. Hearing these insults, I calmly perched atop the courtyard wall. It was none other than the son of Wang Qingke of the Liu family. Wang Feng, likely realizing that my strength was far from ordinary and recalling the events of a few days ago, had come specifically to settle the score. At that moment, Wang Feng saw that the courtyard was deathly silent, so he raised his leg and kicked the main gate with all his might, then led 5 or 6 servants armed with blades as they stormed inside. Glaring at Lu Ruyan, who was sitting under the tree, he shouted furiously, "Lu Ruyan, are you deaf? Why is there no response when I call out to you? I am telling you now, you had better hand over that mosquito immediately. Lu Ruyan did not even bother to lift her eyelids, coldly saying, "Get lost." Upon hearing this, Wang Feng was so incensed he was left speechless. "Do you see this?" he sneered. "This wretched woman is clearly feeling guilty. My severely injured saber-toothed tiger, and that pile of high-grade spirit stone powder. It was undoubtedly all the work of that foul insect. If you do not hand over that beast today, I, Wang Feng's, swear I will not let this go. Hand it over now." "Very well, then I shall grant your wish," I thought. I fluttered my wings, circling around to position myself behind Wang Feng. Seeing this, a hint of amusement touched the corners of Lu Ruyan's mouth. "Wang Feng, I remember warning you before. Do not come here to disturb me. As for where my battle beast is, if you turn your head around, will you not see it for yourself?" Hearing Lu Ruyan's words, Wang Feng instinctively turned his head. He found himself face to face with me. Startled, he recoiled, desperate to put distance between us. But how could I ever grant him such an opportunity? I flapped my wings with immense force, my speed instantly breaking the sound barrier. Wang Feng only felt a buzzing in his ears. Before he could even let out a scream, my proboscis had pierced his neck with lethal precision. Gulp, gulp, the warm, rich blood flowed frantically into my body through my proboscis. I had to admit, while Wang Feng's character was beyond redemption, as the grandson of Wang Qingke, he had been nourished since childhood, with all manner of heavenly treasures and earthly wonders. The energy contained within his blood was truly exceptional. With every deep swallow I took, Wang Feng let out a miserable shriek, his entire body trembling as if struck by lightning. The surrounding servants were left stunned. They only saw their young master suddenly scream and clutch his neck, leaping in place. They were completely oblivious, for in less than 5 seconds they had seen nothing at all. The face of Wang Feng, which had been rosy moments ago, withered into a sallow, dried-up husk with a speed visible to the naked eye. He resembled a piece of salted meat left to desiccate in the sun. "Young master, what has happened to you?" "Quickly, summon the physician at once." "Hold on, young master, the physician is almost here." At this moment I felt quite disgusted, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His internal fire was far too intense. The taste was quite frankly mediocre. "I would advise you to consume more cooling elixirs for your constitution." Thought settled. A sharp-eyed servant finally caught sight of me. "Look there. It is that mosquito. It must have drained the young master of his blood. Capture it at once." I cast a look of utter contempt at them, spread my wings, and soared away to perch upon the shoulder of Lu Ruyan. An elderly servant, appearing to be around 60 years of age, watched this scene with a sudden change in expression as he looked toward Lu Ruyan. Lu Ruyan stood up, brushing the dust from the hem of her robes. "Wang Feng trespassed into my residence with the intent to harm an heir of the family. My pet was merely acting in legitimate self-defense. Is there a problem with that?" I immediately understood her intention and alighted upon her fingertip. The old servant watched this display, instinctively swallowing hard. You dare to harbor a demonic beast that harms your own kin? Wang Qingke will never forgive you for this." Having said this, the old servant hoisted Wang Feng up and hurriedly carried him off to find a physician. The courtyard returned to a state of tranquility. Lu Ruyan lowered her head slightly and poked my head with her finger. "Not bad. You even know how to help me vent my frustrations. It was you who did it last time as well, was it not?" Had I not assisted you, you would have been bullied to death by these fools long ago. With this noble one as your contracted beast, you should consider yourself fortunate." Lu Ruyan watched my posturing and suddenly let out a soft laugh. In that fleeting moment, she possessed the poise of the human empress from my past life, and my gaze could not help but linger in a daze. One must admit, regardless of the circumstances, that Lu Ruyan is truly exquisite, far more beautiful than any of the She is truly worthy of the title of future empress. "Quite right, you speak the truth. Had you not come to my aid, I would have been bullied to death long ago." Her smile vanished in an instant, and she said sternly, "However, they suffered a heavy loss today. Wang Qingke convened a clan-wide assembly, coercing me to hand you over. In that case, we shall no longer remain in this Lu clan." I waved my tentacles in agreement. Yet, just as I took flight, I suddenly recalled the mountain of snacks idling in the clan treasury, which would be a waste to leave behind. It would be far better to sweep it all clean. Perhaps the system had sensed my intentions. The notification chime rang out once more. Ding. "Since the host has severely wounded a pivotal member of the clan, a mission is activated. Scour the Lu family treasury. Unlock the God-tier skill, Spirit Manifestation of All Things." As the system's voice faded, I was immediately stirred with excitement. I flapped my wings twice toward Lu Ruyan and took the lead, flying straight toward the treasury in the back mountain. Lu Ruyan shouted from behind, "Hey, where are you going?" "Follow me closely. This master shall take you to accumulate your initial capital." Although Lu Ruyan could not understand my words, as she watched the direction I was heading, the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. That was the direction of the treasury. Furthermore, is this creature really just a mosquito? Why do I feel as though I have just formed a contract with a common bandit? Though she grumbled in complaint, her movements were not the least bit sluggish. Her figure moved with haste. In mere minutes, I had led Lu Ruyan to the Lu clan treasury. Outside the gate stood 2 guards of the 3rd stage, idly chatting with one another. Have you heard the news? That girl, Lu Ruyan, has lost her mind. She went and formed a contract with a mosquito. Is that true or just a rumor? Could she really have signed a contract with a mere mosquito? Of course it is true. A genius has turned into a laughingstock. Furthermore, I heard she just severely wounded Wang Qingke's son. Dilly before long, Wang Qingke will arrive with his men to purge the clan of such disgrace. A faint, nearly imperceptible buzzing sound swept past. I darted forward, swift as a blade, and slashed across one of the guards' throats. The guard immediately clutched his neck and collapsed to the ground. As the remaining guard opened his mouth to raise the alarm, Lu Ruyan struck his nape with a precise lightning-fast hand chop. Clean and lethal. The guard's limbs went limp and he slumped onto the floor. Lu Ruyan and I exchanged a glance, a silent smile of mutual understanding passing between us. However, as Lu Ruyan observed the formation sealing the vault, her brows furrowed deeply. The gate was protected by a spirit-binding formation. The moment it was touched, the jade token worn Wang Qingke would shatter instantly, alerting him that an intruder had breached the treasury. Yet before she could finish her warning, I lunged headlong toward the massive doors, silently invoking my power. As the system initiated the spirit absorption process, a deep vibration echoed through the air. The jade forest formation, previously pulsating with brilliant light, flickered as my touch made contact. The radiance strobed violently before fading into nothingness, leaving the formation reduced to mere dust. Ding. Absorb the formation's spirit energy. Receive 200 evolution points. With a metallic groan, the heavy door swung open. Low-grade spirit stones were piled high like a mountain, while mid-grade spirit stones were neatly stacked, bag upon bag. Beyond them lay thousands of high-grade and even peak-grade spirit stones, accompanied by countless secret manuals and treasures. A fortune, a true windfall, had fallen into my grasp. I dove directly into the pile of peak-grade spirit stones and began to drain them voraciously. Ding. Absorbed peak-grade spirit stone. Received 100 evolution points. All attributes increased. Ding. Absorbed peak-grade spirit stone. Received 200 evolution points. All attributes increased. Ding. Absorbed peak-grade spirit stone. Received 300 evolution points. All attributes increased. Current evolution points. 1600 2000. Beside me, Lu Ruyan watched the spectacle and exclaimed, simply incredible. She hurriedly withdrew her high-grade spatial bag to begin looting, but suddenly, a powerful and oppressive aura descended upon us. Lu Ruyan snapped her spatial bag shut. It was time to retreat. A blade of energy, dozens of meters long, crashed down with a deafening roar, cleaving the stone steps before the treasury in two. Wang Qingke gazed at his emptied vault, his beard trembling with rage and his eyes burning with murderous intent. Lu Ruyan, your courage knows no bounds. You actually dare to plunder the entire treasury of this clan. Lu Ruyan, seeing this, held her sword across her chest. These items were left behind by my father. Since the clan has acted without integrity, it is only reasonable for me to reclaim what is rightfully mine. Infuriated, he swung his long saber and charged straight at me, but I was swifter than he. I immediately activated the light enlargement ability. Though I was originally as small as a sesame seed, in less than half a second, I expanded to 10 meters in height, and simultaneously spiritual energy enveloped my entire body, forming a suit of dark gold armor. My proboscis became even more formidable, surging from a mere sliver to 20 meters in length. Even Wang Qingke, who had been charging forward, was forced to break abruptly in midair upon witnessing this sight. His eyes widened in sheer terror as he stared at me. Deep down, Wang Qingke cursed, wondering what manner of monstrosity this was. But after the initial shock, he quickly deduced that this must be Lu Ruyan's life-bound battle beast. Furthermore, sensing my aura, he realized I had only reached the 4th rank, significantly lower than his own, so he charged at me once more. However, I let out a cold laugh and fired a terrifying beam of particle light directly at the oncoming Wang Qingke. Wang Qingke's eyelids twitched violently. He exerted all his strength to slash out a wave of saber ki. As the two collided, a deafening explosion echoed through the air, and a violent shock wave of energy surged outward. In his panic, Wang Qingke used his long saber as a shield before him, struggling desperately to withstand the pillar of light. Yet, the moment the terrifying particle beam made contact, Wang Qingke was sent flying backward. He slammed into the ground, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood, but the ordeal was far from over. Just as Wang Qing scrambled to his feet, Lu Ruyan's figure appeared behind him like a phantom. A flash of cold light flickered. Her long sword pierced through Wang Qingke's shoulder, and Lu Ruyan swiftly retreated to a distance. Not wishing to prolong the battle, I shrunk back down into a tiny black speck and followed her. However, before departing, I added one final blast of particle light, incinerating all of Wang Qingke's hair into ashes, leaving him completely bald. After coughing up more blood, Wang Qingke realized in horror that the old man was so enraged that he let out a thunderous roar. Shortly thereafter, Lu Ruyan and I reached the outskirts of the city. I asked her where we were headed next. Lu Ruyan glanced back at Yun City one last time and replied that we were bound for the Saint Dragon Academy in the Imperial capital, where the abundance of resources would ensure my rapid growth in strength. Very well, I replied, but you shall be covering the cost of our meals along the way. Right, do you see that cargo carriage belonging to the merchant caravan ahead? I find myself hungry once again. Upon hearing this, Lu Ruyan was left speechless. This mosquito of hers was truly a gluttonous creature to the core. Very quickly, following my persistent requests, Lu Ruyan secured us a ride with the caravan, and I hopped aboard to gather some information. This merchant group was known as the Saint Dragon Caravan, a fleet dedicated to transporting tributes for the imperial family. Their cargo this time included a young firefox with fur as red as flame, along with several spirit cores and other rare materials. The security was exceptionally high. There were over 100 guards alone, and dozens of defensive formations protecting the shipment. After grasping the situation, Lu Ruyan flicked my head and warned, "Do not cause any trouble. This is a royal caravan. If something happens, I will not be able to protect you." I rolled my eyes and scoffed in disdain. Is there anything in this world that I, this master, cannot consume? Deep night soon descended, and the caravan halted in the forest to rest. Apart from the night watchmen, most were fast asleep, and Lu Ruyan had already entered a state of deep meditation. I opened my eyes, vibrated my wings, and with a soft whoosh, transformed into a streak of light, darting straight out of the carriage. What are elite guards to me? What are alarm formations? These things might have been troublesome before, but for one who has awakened the ability to assimilate all things, do they pose any real difficulty? Absolutely not. I easily bypassed the guards and landed atop the treasure carriage in the center of the formation. I gazed at the glowing formation pulsing atop the carriage, let out a cold laugh, and sprawled directly onto the array. With a sharp plunge of my proboscis, I activated my passive skill, Universal Assimilation, greedily devouring the mid-tier formation. Evolution points increased by 20. In a mere 2 seconds, the formation dimmed instantly, completely losing its effect. As I slipped through the gap in the carriage door, a wave of dense spiritual energy rushed directly into my face. The carriage was overflowing with high-grade spirit crystals of every color imaginable. There were also several chests filled with century-old medicinal herbs of the finest quality. Furthermore, in a cage right in the center, a young fox was being held captive. This must be the firefox that this merchant caravan was commissioned to escort. This little creature was truly a rare spirit beast. Even while locked within the cage, it held its chin high. Its gaze was so arrogant that it seemed to disregard all of heaven and earth. It carried itself with such a pretentious air. Moreover, as I landed atop the cage, the young firefox sensed me immediately. A flicker of disdain flashed within its pupils. Seeing this, I could not help but laugh. Oh, quite the temper, aren't we? Yet, as a fireball hurtled toward me, I did not bother to dodge. Waiting until it was nearly upon me, I took a deep breath. Evolution points increased by 5. The Tier 2 spirit fire was instantly swallowed into my stomach. The firefox's eyes widened in sheer astonishment, while I surged forward in the blink of an eye. With a swift strike, my stinger pierced accurately into its neck, and a surge of fresh blood flooded into my gut, devouring the rare firefox bloodline. My evolution points increased by 50, and all my attributes were upgraded. The firefox attempted a shrill cry, but before the sound could escape its throat, I released a wave of pressure, forcing it to flatten against the ground, utterly incapable of movement. In just a few short seconds, the firefox, which had possessed a sleek, lustrous coat, had withered noticeably in size. Its fur turned brittle and dull, and the arrogance in its eyes transformed entirely into profound terror. Great One, Ancestor, stop draining me, or I shall wither away completely. Hearing its plea for mercy, I withdrew my stinger and let out a loud burp, observing its near-death state with a critical eye. I felt a sense of disappointment. It was truly a piece of trash. It couldn't even handle a few bites before collapsing. But then, a thought occurred to me. This firefox was, after all, a tribute for the imperial family. If I were to accidentally kill it, the royalty would undoubtedly launch a thorough investigation. If that were to happen, I fear it would delay Lu Ruyan's journey to the imperial capital. If you do not wish to die, you shall be my subordinate from this day forth. Whenever this Great One is hungry, you must offer your blood willingly. Do you understand? The firefox, now on the verge of death, dared not offer any resistance. It then obediently extended its paw, showing it understood its new place. It pushed aside the chest at its side, shoving dozens of premium-grade spirit crystals inside directly in front of me. It wagged its tail at me ingratiatingly, its intentions perfectly clear. Big brother, please enjoy these spirit crystals, just do not eat me. Seeing this, my mood instantly improved. This little creature certainly knows how to conduct itself. Therefore, I saw no reason to be polite. I flew straight toward the pile of spirit crystals and began to feast until I was full. Those offered spirit crystals quickly turned to dust, only for the next pile to take their place. It was not until I felt enough time had passed that I let out a burp and flew back to the carriage of Lu Ruyan. Early the next morning, a roar of fury suddenly erupted from outside. What is the meaning of this? How did they all turn to dust? Who did this? Investigate this immediately. Everyone was gathered together in an open clearing. Lu Ruyan was of course also summoned outside. Knowing nothing, she replied coldly that she had been inside the carriage cultivating all night, and had not stepped out even a single pace. Finding no useful leads, the guards were forced to let her return, but the moment she entered, her gaze locked onto me. She gritted her teeth and casually waved her hand to erect a soundproof barrier. Did you go out shopping again last night? What else could I do? If I am not well fed, how am I to protect you, my lady? I even recruited a subordinate for you while I was at it. That Firefox now answers to me. Upon hearing this, the corner of Lizrian's mouth twitched. Hurry and solent your aura. Once we reach the imperial capital, you will have plenty of time to eat. With that, she waved her hand, instantly clearing away the lingering scent of fox from my body. Soon the merchant caravan underwent several rounds of inspections. Finding nothing, they were forced to grit their teeth and swallow their losses as they continued their journey. However, just as the caravan was passing through a canyon, just as I had finished digesting, suddenly a wolf's howl echoed from the mountain range ahead, immediately followed by a series of thunderous explosions. Over 200 large men riding gray wolves surged down from both sides of the canyon, surrounding the entire convoy. The leader of the bandits was bare-chested, his face marred by a terrifying saber scar. As soon as he finished speaking, the bandits charged forward. In an instant, the entire canyon descended into a scene of carnage. Inside the carriage, Lu Ruyan's hand reached for her sword, prepared to strike at any moment. Witnessing this, I quickly restrained her with a cold snort. Woman, stay seated and do not move. Let me go secure some extra rations. With a sharp whistle, before Lu Ruyan could even open her mouth, I transformed into a streak of light and darted outside. At this moment, the battle outside the trade caravan was harrowing. Fresh blood and mangled corpses were scattered everywhere. Although the guards were elite, these mountain bandits were no mere rabble, and having secured the geographical advantage, the guards could only struggle to hold their ground. The massive beast suddenly stiffened, blood surging into my body like a torrential flood. Ding devoured a 4th stage one-horned wolf, gained 30 evolution points. In a mere 3 seconds, the one-horned wolf, which was as large as an ox, withered into a dried husk. The bandit atop it watched the scene, his face draining of all color. But just as he was about to scream for help, my stinger sliced horizontally across his throat. The blood flowed into my body once more.
Ding!
Devoured the blood essence of a 4th-stage martial artist, gained 20 evolution points. I let out a satisfied sigh, truly invigorating. Without pausing in the slightest, I continued to transform into a streak of light, weaving madly through the ranks of the bandits. Every time I brushed past a bandit, a vast surge of blood essence poured into my body, and corpse after corpse collapsed, drained of every drop of blood. The number of bandits who had perished under my stinger was already no fewer than 50. By now, the mountain bandits had noticed the abnormality. There is a demon. Old Third's blood has been drained completely. Extreme panic began to spread throughout the valley. The scarred man in the distance, seeing this scene, unleashed a powerful horizontal slash that sent the leader of the guards flying backward. He roared in fury, "Damn it all, what are you lot panicking about? Everyone, halt! Which insolent wretch dares to interfere in my business? Show yourself at once." Just as his voice trailed off, I descended precisely above his head. Why must you scream so loudly? You are causing me a splitting headache, I thought to myself, and I unleashed my oppressive aura without a shred of restraint. With a resounding boom, a terrifying surge of spiritual pressure descended, instantly enveloping the entire area. The moment those hundreds of unicorn beasts felt this immense pressure, they all let out miserable wails, their legs trembling uncontrollably, and leaking both excrement and urine. They all collapsed onto the ground in submission. The scarred man bore the brunt of the assault, his protective ki shattering into pieces upon his body. Both his knees buckled, and he was forced into a heavy prostrate kneel. "Senior, spare my life. This lowly one did not know this was your convoy. I was wrong. I will never dare to do this again. You do not truly realize your mistake. You merely realize that you are about to die." I then landed upon his head, my proboscis piercing straight through his crown. A massive surge of vital blood energy flooded into my body. In the blink of an eye, this ferocious bandit leader was reduced to a withered husk, devouring a 5th stage peak martial artist. Evolution points increased by 150. Current evolution points, 2103,000. The path to the 5th evolution is now less than halfway complete. I surveyed my surroundings and saw that the remaining common bandits had long since been terrified out of their wits, scattering in a frantic retreat. Seeing this, I did not bother to pursue them. I flapped my wings and flew back toward Lu Ruyan's carriage. At this moment, the captain of the guards was struggling to pull himself up, staring at the withered corpses scattered across the ground, and the remains of the scarred man. His face was filled with utter confusion, having no idea what had transpired. He had just been sent flying by a single strike, and after seeing the scarred man spout such arrogant words, then proceed to beg for his life. only to end up as a desiccated corpse. He had no understanding of what had happened in the interim. Finally, it seemed as if he had come to a realization. They knelt down on the ground, filled with deep gratitude, bowing their heads forcefully 3 times toward the empty air. Many thanks to the senior who acted in the shadows to save the lives of over 100 members of the caravan. The imperial family of the Great Xia Empire will certainly reward your immense kindness. Immediately after, the surrounding subordinates knelt down in succession, frantically kowtowing to the empty void. This spectacle was, of course, observed by Lu Ruyan, who remained inside the carriage. Even though she was a great emperor in her previous life, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch at the mention of the senior. If they knew that their savior was merely a gluttonous mosquito, I suspect these people would draw their blades and strike you down. And what if they did? You tell me, did I not save them? However, the blood of these bandits is truly foul-tasting. If it were not for the evolution points, I would have no desire to consume it at all. Are you still going to be a picky eater? But you did well this time. Not only did you save me the trouble of acting myself, but you also concealed our true strength. Naturally, with me here, you can just sit back and be glad. 2 days later, the caravan finally emerged from the mountain range and arrived at the capital city, Shenwu. And entering the city, Lu Ruyan took me directly to the Wanbao Pavilion of the imperial capital. She knew clearly that to utilize the resources of the Shenglong Academy, one must first succeed in the entrance examination. However, the Shillong Academy is not easily entered. One must visit the Wanbao Pavilion to purchase materials to improve their strength. Very quickly, the 2 of us arrived at the Wanbao Pavilion. She emptied the contents of her storage ring directly onto the counter. With a clattering sound, over 100 high-level beast soul cores and 3 perfectly intact pieces of 4th-rank beast hide tumbled out. Along with more than 10-century-old medicinal herbs plundered from the treasure vault, they instantly formed a small mountain. The eyes of the shopkeeper immediately lit up, but upon seeing Lu Ruyan's ordinary attire and her rather simple clothing, a flash of greed crossed his face. Young lady, the goods are of good quality, but these beast remains are far too strange, as if they were drained of their essence by some sort of dark art. For goods of such dubious origin, our Wanbao Pavilion faces a great risk if we were to acquire them. I will offer a price of 3,000 mid-grade spirit stones. That damned fatty. This pile of goods is worth at least 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones, yet he has the audacity to offer a mere 3,000. He is clearly treating people like livestock, ready for the slaughter. Lu Ruyan understood this perfectly, so she did not even have the interest to haggle, coldly uttering only 2 words, not for sale. But at that very moment, with a loud crash, the main doors were kicked open. A young nobleman strode in with an arrogant gait. He was adorned in an expensive set of protective dharma robes. In his hand he twirled 2 fist-sized fire cloud crystals. Trailing behind him was a Tier 5 demonic beast. It was a rare golden-armored crocodile. One look was enough to tell he was a scion of a prominent and wealthy clan. He cast a sidelong glance at the items arranged on the table. Hold on. I have taken a fancy to this 7-colored flower. Having said that, he carelessly tossed a worn coin pouch toward Lu Ruyan, which contained only a handful of spirit stones. Haha, young Master Zhao, what brings you here? Since you have set your sights on it, who would dare refuse you? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and hand that item over to young Master Zhao. Let me tell you, young Master Zhao is a person of great importance. He could crush you as easily as an ant. Standing nearby, young Master Zhao listened to the shopkeeper, and while he said nothing, he extended his hand, waiting for Lu Ruyan to obediently present the 7-colored flower. But in her past life, Lu Ruyan was an empress. How could she possibly be provoked by such a trivial nobody? A frigid killing intent instantly condensed in her eyes. Swish. A flash of cold light appeared, and a bloody gash materialized on young Master Zhao's wrist. Immediately after, fresh blood sprayed out amidst the miserable screams of young Master Zhao. His hand fell severed to the ground. My hand. My hand. Quickly, capture her for me. I will make her wish she were dead. The expressions of everyone present changed drastically. No one could have expected that Lu Ruyan would be so daring and audacious. She had actually severed the hand of a high-born young master. The guards behind young Master Zhao drew their swords, preparing to surround her, while the golden-armored crocodile also lunged forward. Seeing this, Lu Ruyan let out a cold snort, ready to strike again, but before she could move, I had already leaped into the fray. My lady, just rest for now. Leave this brat to me. I then transformed into a streak of light, lunging toward the golden-armored crocodile as it pounced. My stinger flashed with a chilling cold radiance. I drove it directly into its maw, piercing brutally from the upper jaw deep into its skull. I began to drain it, drinking greedily with frantic gulping intensity. The golden-armored crocodile let out a shrill, agonizing shriek, writhing in madness upon the ground. Shortly after, as its massive body withered, I received notification. Devoured, a rank 5 golden-armored crocodile, gained 200 evolution points. Having finished, I stretched my body and crawled out from the creature's eye socket. At this moment, the entire Wanbao pavilion fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stared blankly at the now mummified carcass of the crocodile, unable to believe what their eyes had witnessed. The beast that had been rampant and full of vitality only moments ago had been reduced to a desiccated husk in the blink of an eye. Even the arrogance on young Master Zhao's face froze. Paralyzed by terror, he collapsed backward onto the ground. What kind of monster is this? Save me. Save me. The Dharma robe he wore sensed the imminent danger, automatically erupting in a blinding protective barrier. Looking at that shield, a flicker of excitement ignited in my eyes. How fortunate. It seems I have received a bonus prize. This energy shield looks quite substantial. It will surely provide a significant boost to my evolution points. Yet, seeing his defensive barrier activate, young Master Zhao immediately felt a sense of renewed security. Let me tell you, you are finished. I am a young master of the Zhao family. Once my father arrives, I will ensure you wish for death. I will have my father. He could not finish his sentence, as I beat my wings and slammed directly into his robe's protective barrier, opening my maw to begin draining it. The brilliant light of the robe, which he claimed was invincible below the 6th rank, began to dim visibly to the naked eye. After holding out for a brief moment, it let out a faint sound before dissipating entirely. His Dharma robe emitted a series of cracking noises before its spiritual radiance flickered and died. It shattered into nothing more than mere tattered rags. As a gust of wind blew by, nothing remained of his attire except for a pair of white undergarments printed with red flowers. He had been utterly humiliated in front of everyone. In my mind, the system notification chimed. Devoured a high-grade 6th rank Dharma robe, received 3,000 evolution points. Current evolution points, 3,000. 5th evolution criteria met. Upon hearing that I had met the requirements for evolution, I flew back and landed on Lu Ruyan's shoulder. The taste of this garment was nothing to boast about. It reeks of scum. Watching the scene unfold, a faint smile tugged at the corner of Lu Ruyan's lips, before she cast a cold, sharp gaze toward the stunned shopkeeper. With a cold laugh, I asked, "Now how much is this shipment worth?" The fat manager was so terrified he nearly wet himself. He scrambled toward the vault, tripping over his own feet in his haste. Trembling, he retrieved a black card containing 20,000 superior-grade spirit stones. No, make it 50,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Lu Ruyan took the black card without a second thought. Ignoring the naked young Master Zhao entirely, she turned and strode out of the Wanbao pavilion. But before we had gone far, I suddenly felt the energy within my body begin to spiral out of control. Violent surges of power started rampaging through my core. Realizing I had consumed too much, and was on the verge of my 5th evolution, I immediately alerted Lu Ruyan. Upon hearing this, Lu Ruyan hurried out of the city, seeking a desolate region. This place will suffice. Rest assured and proceed with your evolution. I shall stand guard for you. No sooner had she spoken, than I could no longer suppress the energy surging within me. With a deafening boom, a dense dark light erupted suddenly from my body. Then the notification sound of the Jinju system began ringing incessantly. Conditions for the 5th evolution have been met. The host's internal energy stores are detected to be profound. Activating the branch of transformation. Choosing the specialized enhancement for this cycle. Enhancing the ability of division. I desire thousands upon thousands of swarms at my command. With a single opening of my maw, they shall pour forth like a torrent, blotting out the heavens and the earth. Obtaining derivative skills from a god-tier talent. Infinite swarm. Evolution successful. Beginning the transformation now. Countless beams of dark light enveloped me. Eventually, they coalesced into a colossal black cocoon. It then began to draw in the surrounding spiritual energy, creating a massive vortex of pure essence. Lu Ruyan held her sword, scanning her surroundings with vigilance, staying within 5 paces of the cocoon. It is unknown how much time had passed, but the vortex of spiritual energy gradually subsided. Crack! A crisp, sharp sound echoed through the silent wilderness. A fissure appeared on the surface of the cocoon. Immediately afterward, a slender with a single strike, I tore through the cocoon, the force so immense it triggered a sonic boom in the air. I then slowly stood to my full height, bowing my head to examine my own form. I was no longer that detestable mosquito. I now possessed a human body of unbelievable perfection, standing over 1.8 meters tall with fair skin and an elegant physique. Even my manhood was of impressive stature. With a mere thought, the shed skin upon my body coalesced into a black robe, and my hair cascaded down to my shoulders, natural and unrestrained. Looking every bit the wealthy young noble, I cracked my neck, hearing the joints pop. I cast my gaze toward Lu Ruyan not far away, who was visibly stunned. Perhaps she had never imagined that a lowly, wretched mosquito could successfully assume a human form, let alone a form that possessed such overwhelming, handsome charisma. It was truly unfathomable. Even if she had encountered countless souls in her previous life, she had surely never witnessed something so absurd. At the thought, the corners of my mouth curled into a faint smile. What is it? Have you been rendered speechless by the sight? Sooner had I finished speaking than Lu Ruyan suddenly snapped out of her trance. Her eyelashes trembled almost imperceptibly. but she quickly suppressed her emotions, returning to that icy, expressionless mask of hers. "You may look the part," she remarked, "though I wonder if you are merely a handsome exterior hiding nothing of substance." I let out a soft laugh. I was already well acquainted with her arrogant nature. I took a steady stride forward, closing the distance between us with each step. The significant height difference forced her to tilt her head back to meet my gaze, while I leaned in close to whisper in her ear, "Since you are so curious, I shall show you exactly what I am capable of." Having said this, I turned my eyes toward a towering mountain in the distance, and gestured with my hand, "Go, do your work, my children." The swarm let out a thunderous hum, obeying without a moment's hesitation. Suddenly a torrent of black mist erupted from behind me. No, it was not mist. Lu Ruyan's pupils contracted sharply. She saw clearly now. It was a surging flood composed of tens of thousands of mosquitoes. The aura radiating from them shared the same origin as my own. But Lu Ruyan's shock had only just begun. I watched as the swarm, obeying my command, lunged directly toward the massive mountain nearby. Everywhere they passed, not even a blade of grass remained in their wake. Whether it was birds in the sky, beasts on the ground, or the flora and vegetation, all were devoured until nothing was left. In the end, the swarm of mosquitoes, possessing an insurmountable power, directly leveled the entire mountain. And witnessing this scene, Lu Ruyan was left completely stunned. Even with her extensive knowledge, she was left in awe by such an abnormal area of affectability of mine. Had she possessed this power in her previous life, how could she have been surrounded and killed by the alien emperors? Thinking of this, Lu Ruyan looked at me, an incredibly complex emotion suddenly flashing in her eyes. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the early morning of the following day. At this moment, the square in front of Shenglong Academy was filled with a boisterous crowd. Prodigies from all corners of the nation, each accompanied by their guardian spirit beasts, lined up waiting to enter the academy. Among them were rare Tier 3 flaming flying tigers, as well as Tier 4 gale eagles and behemoths clad in iron armor, emanating terrifying auras. But most formidable were the group at the very front. They were all around 17 or 18 years of age, dressed in luxurious robes, with each one possessing a deep, unfathomable aura. Their bonded battle beasts were, at the very least, of the 5th tier. The strongest among them had even reached the 6th tier. This was the strongest contender of this year's batch, and also the older brother of that noble young master from yesterday, Zhao Zilong. Very soon the academy began its preliminary examinations. I transformed into human form and followed Lu Ruyan in line. It was not long before it was my turn. The person in charge of registration was a bald old man. He cast a glance at Lu Ruyan, noting that her martial cultivation was decent enough, but stated, "Here at Shenglong Academy, it is the combined combat strength of both the battle beast and its master that serves as the crucial factor. Where is your contracted battle beast? Release it for me to see. If its potential is lower than the 3rd tier, you do not even possess the qualifications to participate." Lu Ruyan remained expressionless, glancing toward me, who was standing to her side. "My pet is a mosquito. Its form is too small, so it is currently inconvenient to release." As soon as these words were uttered, the bustling square fell silent for a single heartbeat. Before the prodigies of the great clans erupted into a wave of mocking laughter. One obese man laughed until he was doubling over. "Haha, did I hear that correctly? To think someone would actually sign a contract with a mosquito." A young woman in purple robes also covered her mouth, a sneer appearing on her face. No wonder she only brought along a fair-faced youth as a mere plaything. It turns out she was hiding her spirit beast, because she dared not let anyone see it. This piece of trash deserve to enter the secret realm with us? And do they truly deserve to participate in the examination alongside us? Hearing these insults, a flash of murderous intent flickered in Lu Ruyan's eyes. I stepped forward to shield her, remaining silent. Only the eyes belonging to a primordial savage beast swept coldly across the crowd. At the same time, the terrifying pressure of a Grade 5 great demon erupted violently. Behind me, the phantom of a colossal mosquito, capable of blotting out the sky, faintly manifested. In an instant, the fat man who had just been mocking us suddenly choked, his voice silenced as if he were being strangled. The Grade 4 hellhound beside him fared even worse. Upon sensing my aura, its entire body trembled, and the ground beneath it grew damp. It had clearly been frightened into wetting itself. The old man in charge of the examination broke into a cold sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs. He never imagined in his wildest dreams that Xiao Nian, who appeared so harmless beside this young lady, was actually a demon beast, and a Grade 5 great demon capable of taking human form at that. This was far from trivial, and a deathly silence fell over the entire assembly. Who could have expected that in a place as insignificant as Yun City, someone would be capable of forming a soul contract with a Grade 5 demon beast? Among us noble families from the imperial capital, who does not possess top-tier cultivation techniques and martial manuals, whose storage ring is not filled with supreme artifacts and arrays. Once we enter the secret realm, princess, you only need to use these inexhaustible treasures to crush him into a pulp. The princess speaks truly. These bumpkins from a remote backwater lack any foundation and pose no real threat. Before true prodigies like us, they are nothing more than high-level fodder. Confronted with their desperate attempts to save face, I did not bother to retort. Instead, I reached out to steady Lu Ruyan, while my mind was racing with frantic calculations. Top-tier artifacts, supreme arrays, countless heavenly treasures that they could never finish using. This is truly excellent. Does this master fear that there won't be enough for me to consume in the secret realm? Just wait until you enter. I shall show you what true power really is. The old man in charge of the examination. The first stage of the trial involves a hunt within the secret realm. Each participant is given a jade slip for teleportation, valid for 5 days. Every demonic beast hunted, and every spiritual herb gathered within the realm will be converted into points. The higher the points, the greater the reward. Now the teleportation begins, I tell you. That young man in the white light has clearly stirred the attention of several demonic beasts, as the various geniuses in the plaza could plainly see. In just a fleeting moment, over a dozen grade 3 queen bees have swarmed them. Lu Ruyan draws her longsword, preparing to dispose of these demonic beasts first. But as she turns back, she discovers me taking a deep breath, my expression solemn as I gaze at her. Ruyan, tell me, if I were to drain this entire secret realm dry, would it be possible? You have lost your mind. It contains countless precious treasures and spiritual herbs, along with thousands upon thousands of trial-bound demonic beasts. No matter how vast your appetite may be, you could never consume it all. Yet, before she could even finish her sentence, I interrupted her with action. A thunderous roar erupted as a pillar of black light descended from the heavens, engulfing me, followed by an endless surge of black mist pouring into my body. Millions, tens of millions of mosquitoes, too many for the naked eye to count, centered upon me, emitting a buzzing sound that would make anyone's skin crawl, surged outward in every direction with a deafening rumble. Those grade 3 queen bees did not even have the chance to cry out before they vanished into thin air. It was not just the demonic beasts, the spiritual mushrooms upon the ground, the fruits upon the trees, and even the very spiritual energy of this forest were mercilessly devoured by this swarm, stripped clean. Even the vegetation was consumed, leaving not a single trace behind. Wherever the swarm passed, not even a blade of grass could grow. As the swarm's pillaging grew increasingly frantic, the system notifications chimed one after another, as if going mad. Ding, devoured a 100-year-old spiritual fruit, converted into evolution points. Ding, devoured a swarm of grade 3 wolf bees, converted into evolution points. Ding, devoured a massive volume of pure spiritual energy, all attributes upgraded. I stretched my body with satisfaction, and seeing Lu Ruyan standing there frozen like a statue, I led her away to vent her frustrations. At this very moment, a commotion unprecedented in scale erupted back at the plaza, for the stone tablet displaying the point rankings suddenly blazed with a light that reached the heavens. The examiner in charge had just lifted his teacup for a sip, only to spray it all out in shock. He rushed away in a hurry to find the chief examiner. At that moment, the chief examiner was leisurely enjoying tea in his chambers. Something is wrong, Excellency. A major incident has occurred at the examination grounds. The chief examiner frowned. Why are you in such a panic? Have you no sense of decorum? Has the sky fallen or what? The supervisor trembled, pointing a finger toward the crystal screen. No, it is not that. The entire forest in the southeast mountain region has vanished, completely wiped out. It has been reduced to a barren wasteland. Furthermore, my lord, please look there. The chief examiner's heart suddenly missed a beat. He abruptly raised his head to gaze at the scoreboard. A mouthful of hot tea sprayed across the table. His eyes widened until they were larger than bronze bells. He saw that on the leaderboard, the name previously ranked near the bottom, Lu Ruyan from Yun City, was climbing with terrifying speed. 100 points, 5,000 points, 80,000 points, 300,000 points. Creating an insurmountable gap, she dominated the top of the rankings. The bodyguards of the noble families, who had been expecting their own young masters and misses to slaughter their way to the top, all stared in daze. 300,000 accumulated points. Did she exterminate the entire ancestral line of those third-ranked demonic beasts? The examination has only been underway for 5 minutes. Good heavens, the spiritual energy levels of the formation are draining at a frantic pace. The monitoring system in the southeastern region has been devoured by something unknown. This is truly demonic. The fat man, following behind the 7th princess with a venomous python in tow, wore a fawning expression. Your Highness is truly majestic. We have only been inside for half an incense stick of time, and our points have already surpassed 1,000. At this rate, the top spot belongs to no one but you. As for that girl Lu Ruyan from some place called Yun City, I suspect her points haven't even reached 100 yet. It is truly a farce. She is nothing but a country bumpkin. So what if she has a contract with a beast that can take human form? Without massive amounts of medicinal elixirs to nourish her, and without array formations to support her, she is nothing more than a talentless piece of trash. As his words faded, a rustling sound erupted from the surroundings, a bizarre, distorted noise approaching with immense velocity. The fat man's poison python was the first to detect the threat. The rank 4 demonic beast suddenly reared the upper half of its body, hissing as if it had encountered its natural predator. Without a backward glance, it abandoned its master and fled for its life. Realizing they were in grave danger, the group drew their magical artifacts in unison, eyes scanning their surroundings with vigilance. The next second, the previously bright sky plummeted into darkness as a dense, buzzing roar swept in from all directions. Millions of mosquitoes, resembling a thick obsidian fog, instantly swarmed and surrounded them. The seventh princess' expression shifted, her voice laced with shock. What in the heavens is this? Is this a swarm of spirit insects? Form a formation at once. Use your artifacts to obliterate them. These wretched vermin know nothing of their place. To dare lay a claw upon this lady, they are courting death. As the seventh princess finished her command, the scions of the great families unleashed their talismans and artifacts simultaneously. In an instant, a barrage of brilliant multicolored spells and seals rained down upon the aerial swarm with maddening intensity. However, their confidence shattered almost as quickly as it had risen. They realized that their attacks failed to create even the slightest ripple among the insects. At best, they could carve a temporary gap in the swarm, but it was filled again in the blink of an eye by the surrounding mass. Even the precious artifacts within the swarm could only endure for a fleeting moment before being consumed by the insects. The seventh princess finally descended into panic. This was no ordinary swarm, but a manifestation of a demonic beast's supernatural power. Retreat into the spirit formation, quickly. She then activated her peak-grade defensive treasure, summoning a cerulean barrier that enveloped her, sealing her off from the mosquito swarm outside. Standing several miles away, I raised an eyebrow. I could not only control this swarm remotely, but I could also share their vision. My children, ignore those worthless scraps for now. Focus all your hunger upon that one in the violet robes. Drain that shell dry for me. With the sudden shift, the millions of mosquitoes obeyed, instantly abandoning the others. They swirled together, transforming into a violent cyclone, and clamped down tightly around the seventh princess. Get away, all of you, stay away from me. She could feel the protective barrier around her thinning at a speed visible to the naked eye. A crisp cracking sound rang out, and the protective barrier and dharma robes upon her person lost all their luster. They shattered completely, leaving only tattered rags hanging from her body. However, what left everyone stunned was that after these insects breached the defensive layer, they did not harm a single soul, instead forming a jet-black trail that vanished into the horizon. The gloomy, oppressive sky instantly brightened once more. This maneuver left the seventh princess in a state of utter bewilderment. She could not comprehend what these insects intended to achieve. Yet, she quickly realized that the peerless dharma robes she wore had been reduced to nothing but scraps. Just who was responsible for this? My dharma treasure, and the reputation of this princess. I will never forgive you for this. Just you wait. Meanwhile, deep within the secret realm, I was commanding a swarm of insects that choked the very sky, resembling a gargantuan harvesting machine, frantically plundering everything within sight. The prideful and arrogant demon beasts that once roamed these lands were devoured instantly should they fail to flee in time. As the consumption intensified, my system's interface flickered wildly, and my evolution points poured in like a dam bursting its banks, surging upward at an unstoppable rate. Simultaneously, Lu Ruyan's point-tracking jade tablet grew so intensely bright that it became scalding to the touch. The numbers inscribed upon it had swelled into an unfathomable, astronomical figure. 300,000, 500,000, 1 million. At this very moment, everyone within the secret realm, and those gathered on the plaza in the outside world, stared as if they had witnessed a haunting apparition, their gazes locked firmly upon the stone score tablet. Zhao Zilong, who had previously occupied the top rank, possessed a mere few thousand points. Yet, with a string of zeros trailing behind her name, Liu Ruyan's score nearly shattered the stone monument itself. The teacup in the chief examiner's hand had long since fallen. His lips trembled, unable to utter a single word for the longest time. The elder responsible for maintaining the formation let out a shrill cry of distress. It is finished. The secret realm's energy core is depleting. Even the foundation stones that constitute this space are being gnawed away by an unknown entity. If the examination is not halted immediately, this secret realm will collapse. This secret realm serves as the very foundation of the Shenglong Academy. If it is destroyed, they will become sinners for eternity. The chief examiner made a swift decision without a moment's hesitation, directly crushing the jade slip in his hand. Everyone was instantly teleported out. The examination was forcibly terminated with a thunderous roar. A massive fissure tore through the sky of the secret realm. An irresistible spatial suction force emerged, instantly engulfing everyone within its reach. I had been absorbing energy with great fervor when my body suddenly lifted. Before I could deal with what was right in front of me, the scene shifted. Once my vision stabilized, I had returned to my human form, standing in the center of a chaotic square. Not far away, Lu Ruyan also appeared, stumbling as she arrived. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, A piercing, ear-splitting cry tore through the noise of the square. The seventh princess, wrapped in a spare cloak with her hair in disarray and eyes bloodshot, pointed directly at Lu Ruyan and me. It is those two thieves again. They destroyed my artifact, and I know not what demonic arts they used to disrupt the balance of the secret realm. This is unjust. Scores through such devious, crooked methods must not be counted. That is right, Lu Ruyan cheated. That spirit beast of hers is problematic. If her results are not annulled, we will not accept this. The chief examiner was nursing a splitting headache at this moment. The secret realm had indeed suffered a major catastrophe, and Lu Ruyan's score was, in truth, impossibly high. If she were to be declared the victor just like that, it would be difficult to convince the masses. Thus, the chief examiner cleared his throat and used his spiritual energy to amplify his voice. Due to unforeseen circumstances within the secret realm, the results of this examination are hereby voided. The method of evaluation shall shift to arena combat, where the victor shall be crowned and the loser eliminated. The seventh princess brightened immediately. The fear in her eyes vanished, replaced by a deep, lingering malice. She stared fixedly at Lu Ruyan, grinding her teeth as she spoke. Without those wretched pests, it will be as easy as turning over my palm to kill you. Do you dare to wager a match with this princess? Lu Ruyan's expression remained indifferent. Wager what? This arena duel shall decide the final victor. If I lose, I will bark like a dog before the entire world. And from that day forth, I shall serve as your handmaiden, pouring tea and water for you. But if you, I demand you cripple your own arms, and take that wretched beast of yours to be skinned and stewed into a pot of soup. A roar of shock rippled through the crowd. This wager was far too immense. It was a battle of life and death. Every eye in the arena was fixed upon him, the majority wearing expressions of malicious glee, convinced that he would never dare to accept such terms. I stood beside Lu Ruyan, a flash of bloodlust flickering within my eyes. Very well, I accept this wager on her behalf. However, barking like a dog is far too trivial a penance. If you lose, from this day forward, you shall be the servant who washes Lu Ruyan's feet, coming whenever you are summoned. Fine, since you are so eager to seek your own demise, this princess shall grant your wish. The arena matches commenced swiftly. The early rounds involved mere nobodies, not even requiring the use of true martial arts. With a single palm strike, Lu Ruyan effortlessly sent her opponents flying from the stage. Her swordsmanship was razor sharp, each strike aimed at a lethal point, causing the onlookers below to twitch with instinctive dread. The final decisive battle arrived. Lu Ruyan faced off against the seventh princess. Following the referee's signal, the seventh princess wore a sinister smile, stepping onto the arena without wasting a single word. She retrieved a golden spirit beast tablet from her storage ring and crushed it decisively, releasing a terrifying wave of pressure that swept across the entire arena. A deafening roar echoed out as a colossal two-headed dragon, spanning over 20 meters, materialized from the void. Its entire body was wreathed in crimson spiritual energy, and its two great heads exhaled breaths heavy with oppressive might, clearly indicating it had reached the early stages of the sixth rank. The spectators below erupted into chaos, and Fatty Zhao cried out in terror. Heavens, it is actually a sixth-rank Crimson Flame twin-headed dragon. This is a subdragon species possessing pure draconic bloodline. To think the seventh princess has signed a blood contract with such a ferocious beast. Lu Ruyan is surely doomed this time. A sixth rank facing a fourth rank. This is nothing short of a total suppression of power. The seventh princess stood atop the twin-headed dragon, her expression etched with arrogance and disdain. She's laughed aloud and declared, Lu Ruyan, are you feeling the depths of despair yet? This is the insurmountable gap between our foundations. Now, kneel and beg for mercy. Perhaps this princess will leave your corpse intact. Lu Ruyan looked toward the two-headed beast, showing none of the panic that the crowd expected. Instead, she turned her gaze toward me, and I offered a slight smile, returning her look with a gesture of reassurance. In the next heartbeat, my figure flickered, vanishing instantly from my original position, only to reappear hovering in midair. Floating directly before the twin-headed dragon, the beast seemed to sense a sudden, ominous shift. Both massive heads pivoted simultaneously toward me, yet I allowed it no time to react. I drew in a deep breath, the art of universal spirit manifestation activated. With a sharp whistle, a bolt of invisible profound lightning erupted across the dragon's body. The beast, which had just moments ago appeared so imposing, let out a wretched, piercing shriek. It realized with mounting terror that its dragon blood and soul essence were spiraling out of control. Pulled by a relentless suction, they flowed continuously into my body. In the span of a mere 3 breaths, that colossal frame withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The once vibrant crimson scales lost their luster, turning a deathly, ashen gray. Its 2 heads drooped lifelessly, the light within its eyes rapidly fading until, with a thunderous crash, the creature that had been so fearsome only moments prior was reduced to a shriveled, titanic husk. It fell heavily onto the arena, sending a dense cloud of dust billowing into the air. Devoured, the level 6 crimson twin-headed dragon. Evolution points increased by 500. All attributes surged. I let out a satisfied, lengthy breath. The essence of dragon blood is indeed far more potent than that of those mongrel beasts. The entire arena fell into a silence so profound that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone stood agape, their eyes nearly bulging from their sockets. Zhao the fat man fared even worse. He collapsed onto the ground. His trousers were instantly stained with a dark, wet patch. A single strike. Only one strike, and a level 6 ferocious beast had been eradicated in an instant, without even the chance to offer resistance. Is he even human? This is clearly an ancient, ferocious beast masquerading in human skin. The 7th princess stood atop her dragon lion, her mind completely shattered. She was stunned. The beast beneath her could not even begin to comprehend this reality. It was not until my figure flashed into existence, descending before her, that the pressure radiating from me caused her soul to tremble, once again enveloping her entirely, that she finally snapped back to her senses. I looked down at her, a taunting smile playing upon my lips. I spoke coldly. "Little girl, your dragon is finished. Now it is time to fulfill the terms of our wager." The 7th princess' face turned deathly pale, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. She desperately wanted to flee, but under the weight of my aura, she could not even move a single finger. Her psychological defenses shattered completely. She let out a wail and burst into tears. Then, before the disbelieving eyes of the entire crowd, she knelt on the ground, weeping as she let out several barks like a dog. In this moment, the dignity of the imperial family and the arrogance of the noble clans were utterly trampled beneath my feet. Lu Ruyan stepped forward, casting a frigid glance at her without a word, before turning to the referee to demand the official announcement. The referee wiped the beads of sweat from his brow, raised his hand, and loudly declared the first-place winner of this grand competition, Lu Ruyan. After this battle, Lu Ruyan's reputation resounded throughout the entire imperial city. Upon entering the St. Dragon Academy, Lu Ruyan paid no mind to the clamor and excitement outside, nor did she care to enjoy the wealth and prestige that the first-place position brought. She led me straight into the deepest forbidden cultivation grounds of the academy, for she understood all too well that the true crisis was still far from over, and hidden deep within the academy's forbidden zone lay a supreme-grade spirit vein that every cultivator craved. This top-tier spirit vein was the very foundation of the St. Dragon Academy, and the primary objective of Lu Ruyan's mission. In the cool of the deep night, we silently evaded the patrolling guards, and arrived at the entrance of the forbidden zone. Lu Ruyan stared intently at the barrier shimmering with flickering runes before her, her brows furrowed as she spoke in a low voice. "This is the stage drug trapping formation. It cannot be breached by anyone below the level of a Grand Master. If we were to attack it by force, we would simply be walking into an inevitable disaster." I tapped Lu Ruyan on the shoulder to signal her to step back, then whispered, "Watch closely. Let me show you what a professional lockbreaker looks like." Having said that, I pressed myself directly against the barrier, my spiritual energy surging forth and piercing deep into the core of the formation. Sys detected 9th stage dragon trapping formation. Commencing consumption. As the system's notification rang out, the supposedly impenetrable barrier began to tremble violently. The brilliant, blinding light it had emitted moments ago began to rapidly fade away. The pure energy of the array flowed into my body like 100 rivers returning to the sea. In less than half a shikan, a 9th-tier array capable of imprisoning a Grand Master had transformed into countless specks of light before my very eyes. Before dissolving into the void, Lu Ruyan's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. Despite having long known of my abilities, she could not help but shudder in astonishment each time she witnessed them. The moment the formation shattered, a surge of spiritual energy, so dense it was impossible to disperse, rushed directly toward us. We beheld a colossal spiritual vein, resembling a true dragon coiled deep beneath the earth, radiating energy fluctuations that were truly suffocating. Lu Ruyan's eyes were filled with unbridled joy. She took a deep breath, and immediately sat cross-legged, circulating the earth-rank cultivation technique from her previous life, and began to frantically absorb this massive source of energy. I did not intend to remain idle. Looking at this dragon vein stretching for several miles, I could barely contain my greed. This was the essence of heaven and earth, nurtured over 10,000 years. If I were to drain it completely, to what heights would I evolve? Without a hint of hesitation, I manifested my true form, transforming into a massive beast over 100 meters long, and plunged myself into the spine of the dragon vein. Gulp. The sound was like a divine dragon drinking water, causing the entire subterranean space to tremble violently. Devoured essence of top-tier dragon vein. Evolution points increased by 1,000. Devoured essence of top-tier dragon vein. Evolution points increased by 2,000. Congratulations to the host for advancing 2 levels in succession. As the new level surged throughout my body, I underwent another profound transformation. The black gold armor covering my form suddenly manifested mysterious arcane patterns. My proboscis became even more transparent and lustrous, as if it could pierce through the void itself. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lu Ruyan also awakened from her cultivation. Upon seeing her, I realized she had undergone a world-shaking change. Her cultivation had directly leaped across several major realms, reaching the 7th rank Martial Empress level. She opened her eyes, sensing the power surging within her, gold light erupting from her gaze. But when she turned to look at the spiritual vein, she froze in disbelief. The dragon vein, which had previously been shimmering with radiant light, had now been reduced. Not even a single trace of spiritual energy remained. She turned to look at me, her expression one of utter disbelief. Lu Rian, your appetite is truly monstrous. To think you have completely drained such a massive dragon vein. However, she quickly composed herself, her brows furrowing as she muttered, "This is not right. We have caused such a commotion, to the point of ruining the dragon vein entirely. Why have the old monsters of the Academy not reacted at all? By all logic, they should have descended upon this place long ago." At that moment, I returned to my human form. My 8th stage cultivation allowed my senses to encompass the entire map. I closed my eyes to briefly perceive the world outside, then suddenly snapped them open, a bloodthirsty, excited smile spreading across my face. I licked my lips and said to Lu Ruyan, "Stop worrying about those old fossils. Right now, they are likely struggling to preserve their own lives. The situation outside is far more chaotic than it is here." Hearing this, Lu Ruyan was startled and rushed toward the surface. As soon as she set foot on the ground, the sight before her caused her to fall into an icy abyss. The once prosperous Shenglong Academy had been transformed into a living hell. The sounds of slaughter filled the air as ferocious clawed beasts flooded into the academy like a tidal wave. High above, several academy elders, covered in blood, fought desperately against terrifying alien experts. But they were clearly flickering candles in the wind. In the skies over the imperial capital, thick dark clouds gathered, and a colossal spatial rift stretched across the horizon, from which waves of relentless monsters poured out, waiting to pounce and tear any living soul to shreds. Lurian's face turned deathly pale as she muttered to herself, "The alien invasion, why is it happening so much earlier? In my previous life, there were clearly 3 more years remaining. Could it be that my rebirth has altered the timeline?" While she remained in a daze, a 7th stage alien commander discovered us. He let out a sinister laugh, swung the great axe in his hands, and brought it down toward Lu Ruyan's head, accompanied by a foul, blood-scented wind. "Human brat, die." He bared 2 rows of white, jagged teeth. I laughed and said, "You look ugly, but your blood seems quite appetizing. An offering delivered straight to my doorstep. In that case, I shall not stand on ceremony." Before the words had even faded, I exerted force my fingers, and with a sharp crack, the refined iron weapon was crushed into dust. I then swung my hand, seizing the alien commander firmly by the crown of his head. My all-things-spirit transformation technique was activated instantly. The ill commander let out a harrowing, mournful shriek, and that towering, 3-meter-tall muscular frame was drained dry in the blink of an eye, leaving behind only a layer of withered skin. Ding. Devoured an alien commander. Evolution points increased by 800. I cast the desiccated corpse aside, scanning the sea of alien troops covering the mountains. The emerald light in my eyes burned with a hunger more primal than that of a starving wolf. I turned to Lurian and said, "Stay close, little one. Our grand feast has only just begun." With that, I abandoned all restraint. My 8th order peak aura erupted, possessing strength on par with a 3rd order spirit beast. Facing the surging tide of the alien legion, I sounded the final charge. "My little ones, feast to your heart's content. Leave not a single one alive." With the deafening boom, the black swarm collided with the dense alien army. The 2 forces crashed into one another. Yet this was no battle. It was a one-sided slaughter. The savage aliens realized in terror that no matter how many mosquitoes they struck down, an infinite number more swarmed in to take their place. Furthermore, the proboscises of these insects were truly capable of piercing anything. Even their reinforced armor was easily punctured. In a mere 10 minutes, thousands of desiccated alien corpses littered the Academy Plaza. At that moment, a furious roar thundered from the skies, rattling everyone's eardrums. Who dares to slaughter the subjects of this emperor? A terrifying pressure reaching the peak of the 9th order descended from a rift in space. It was an alien emperor standing 10 meters tall, his entire body radiating an aura of absolute destruction. I locked my gaze upon him. Far from feeling fear, I trembled with anticipation. The peak of the 9th order. What a magnificent nourishment this will be. If I drain him dry, I can achieve a breakthrough and ascend to the pinnacle of this world. I shouted to Liu Ruyan, "Help me clear the foot soldiers. That massive one is mine." As I spoke, I launched myself into the air, hurtling directly toward the alien emperor. The alien emperor saw this, his eyes filled with overt contempt. A mere ant of the 8th order thinks he can shake the heavens? Die for me. He unleashed a punch that caused the surrounding space to shatter like glass. Yet I did not dodge. Instead, I directly activated my light giant transformation. Transforming into a giant dragon 100 meters long, I braced myself to absorb the full force of his strike. I spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, but in that split second, balanced on a razor's edge between life and death, my proboscis plunged deep into his chest. I coiled tightly around his body, my 6 limbs sinking into his flesh like iron spikes. I roared. I have been waiting precisely for this moment. Maximum output. As I unleashed my full power, the arrogant expression on the alien emperor's face instantly shifted to one of sheer terror. He could feel his very life essence draining away at an alarming, terrifying speed. He struggled frantically, desperate to shake me off, but I clung to him like a parasite to the bone, refusing to let go. As the assimilation progressed, my aura grew increasingly formidable, while the alien emperor's presence withered. Finally, amidst his desperate, dying roar, the sweet chime of the system notification sounded like celestial music. Devouring of alien emperor Jujia successful. Congratulations to the host for breaking the shackles and advancing to 9th rank Beast Emperor. In that moment, the heavens and earth changed color, as a wave of royal pressure, belonging solely to me, swept across the world. Even Lu Yanyan, gazing at the demon god-like figure standing in the sky, could not suppress a look of profound shock. She understood that in this lifetime, thanks to this gluttonous mosquito, the fate of humanity had been rewritten. As I drained that alien emperor dry, turning him into a withered husk, the colossal dried-up corpse plummeted from the sky. With a thunderous crash, it slammed into the Academy's white jade square. The entire battlefield fell into a deathly, stifling silence. Whether they were human warriors fighting a desperate battle, or the cruel and bloodthirsty alien army, all were struck as if by a binding spell. Stunned, they stared up at the silhouette that hung in the air like a demonic deity. I hovered above the 9 heavens, letting out a roar of pure, unbridled exhilaration. The sensation of advancing to a 9th rank Beast Emperor was truly intoxicating. Brilliant flashes of light surged through my consciousness. System. Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring a 9th rank Emperor core. Current level 9th rank Beast Emperor. Only one step remains until you reach the 10th rank God Realm. Your God level talent has undergone ultimate evolution and solidification. Please choose your 9th special organ evolution. I closed my eyes and silently commanded the system. Strengthen my spatial. Currently, the alien race is launching an all-out invasion, turning the entire world into a vast high-grade banquet of resources. If consuming too much at once might impede my speed, then congratulations to the host for acquiring the God-tier passive skill, Heaven-Devouring Electric Insects. My stomach has now formed its own independent dimension, capable of instantly refining any form of energy, with no limits to how much it can accumulate. Seeing this skill, my mouth begins to water uncontrollably. This is truly a divine artifact tailor-made for a glutton like me. Below, the alien army finally begins to react. The bearded commanders of the alien race stare at the wide-eyed corpse of their fallen sovereign, letting out mournful, disbelieving roars. Even in their wildest dreams, they could not comprehend this. To ensure this invasion proceeded without a single flaw, they had personally invited a sovereign to oversee the operation, believing they could sweep through the human territory as easily as crushing an ant. Yet, barely after showing his face, before the sovereign could even finish his opening remarks, he was drained dry by an unidentified flying insect, leaving behind nothing but a husk. Damn it, who could they possibly seek retribution from? He declared that he would slay me to avenge the sovereign and force the entire human race to be buried with me. In the next moment, the tens of thousands of alien troops descend into a complete frenzy. They abandon the human warriors surrounding them, surging toward me in the sky like a black tsunami. The Academy elders, who were struggling to hold their ground below, are terrified, their faces draining of all color. An elder with a white beard closes his eyes in despair, sighing as he murmurs, "This time Xiaosong is truly finished." With so many high-level aliens joining forces at once, even a 9th rank Grand Master of the human race would be forced to meet a bitter end on the spot. But just as they assume my death is certain, I do not retreat. Instead, I advance. Gazing at the alien army swarming like ants, I feel as though I am looking at a lavish, full-course imperial feast. I erupt into laughter, slamming my hands together and shout, "You brats, stop holding back. Come out and serve yourselves as a buffet for me." The quality of these clones is truly terrifying. Each one possesses strength comparable to a 5th-rank demonic beast. A black storm formed by 10 million 5th-rank demonic beasts. What kind of concept is that? It is quite simply one-way path to physical annihilation. The insects transform into a black shroud that blots out the sun and sky, diving straight into the heart of the alien army. The very ones who were just moments ago ferociously screaming for the blood of the human race. The very moment they clashed with the insect swarm, the creatures emitted shrill, mournful screeches, as if they were being slaughtered. There was no need for any flamboyant weaponry. A comprehensive, omnidirectional assault descended, leaving no angle of escape. My clones unleashed their proboscises, glowing with a cold, lethal light, stabbing repeatedly into the foreign race. In less than 3 breaths, they drank their fill. Thousands of the vanguard soldiers from the foreign race, shriveled like punctured balloons, instantly desiccated before plummeting from the sky. Evolution points gained from devouring Tier 6 foreign warriors. Hearing the continuous notifications echoing in my mind, I couldn't help but hum with pure satisfaction. This devouring heaven and earth technique, when combined with an inexhaustible swarm of insects, is truly a harvester on the battlefield. While I was feasting in such grand fashion, the arrogant scions from the imperial capital were experiencing a total collapse. The seventh young master, whom I had slain in an instant within the arena earlier, was now disheveled, fleeing desperately through the rubble. The imperial treasure he had once boasted of wearing was already tattered and wretched. Behind him, 2 Tier 7 berserker warriors of the foreign race were in hot pursuit, their mouths watering with ravenous hunger. The fawning, obese Zhao family member fared even worse, as a foreign warrior stepped on him and shattered his bones. He lay in a pool of blood, wailing for his parents and begging for salvation. The seventh princess tripped and fell hard to the ground, her knees crashing against the earth, bleeding profusely. She turned her head in despair to see the 2 berserker warriors raising their butcher blades. Paralyzed by terror, she was a mess of tears and snot. She screamed frantically, declaring her status as an imperial princess, promising endless spirit stones and beauties, if only they would spare her. But the foreign race had no comprehension of her words. The massive blade descended with a blood-chilling whistle, and the seventh princess squeezed her eyes shut in despair, a warm sensation spreading from the bottom of her robes. She, who was once the most arrogant princess in the imperial capital, had actually lost control of her bladder. At this critical juncture, a streak of black light instantly pierced the chests of both berserker warriors. With a dull thud, the 2 hulking figures froze in place, before rapidly withering into mummified corpses and collapsing to the ground with a thunderous impact. The seventh princess waited, but the expected pain never arrived. Trembling, she opened her eyes to see me squatting upon a massive desiccated corpse, as I spat out a mouthful of vile blood. This meat is far too tough, it lacks any real substance. I bared my fangs, as the seventh princess stared at my familiar face and the dark gold wings sprouting from my back. Her mind went blank with shock. Was this not the pathetic Mosquito that Lu Run had formed a contract with? The very demon who had forced her to bark like a dog in front of the entire public. I, a mere Mosquito, had just saved her life. Humiliation and extreme terror intertwined within her soul. The seventh princess rolled her eyes back. Her legs went rigid, and she fainted on the spot. I looked at the puddle on the ground, and shook my head with profound disdain. What a useless piece of trash. They usually roar louder than anyone else, but when it comes to a real fight, they are cowards, not even fit to serve as an appetizer for me. I no longer paid any mind to this bedraggled group of noble descendants, and turned my gaze toward the highest point in the sky, where a massive spatial rift, thousands of feet long, was emitting a crimson light that made one's skin crawl. That was the primary gateway for this current invasion of the foreign race. According to my senses, countless life forces were still gathering on the other side. It seemed they had realized their vanguard had been annihilated. From the depths of the rift came a thunderous, furious roar. Immediately after, 4 foreign princes exuding the aura of the quasi-ninth rank, draped in towering black mist, forced their way halfway through the rift. Upon easing the scene below, which resembled an Asura hell, their eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. One of the princes brandished his spear, pointing it at me while hurling a torrent of insults. He demanded to know what kind of monster I was to dare consume the noble army of the holy race. Watching their panicked, infuriated expressions, my eyes instantly lit up with intense, predatory fervor. How commendable. Heaven has delivered a complete boss family combo right to my doorstep. To refuse such a feast would be a great disservice to myself. My body instantly transformed into a streak of deep golden lightning, shooting up through the 9 heavens, denying them any further opportunity to chatter. I opened my mouth wide, my stomach suddenly expanding before contracting with immense force. A particle beam of blue light, 100 times larger than the previous one, erupted directly from my maw. Today, I shall show you what true absolute firepower looks like. With a deafening boom that shook the heavens, the beam of destructive energy surged straight into the faces of the 4 princes. Before they could even utter a scream, their protective black mist evaporated in an instant. The extreme temperature of the particle beam scorched them, roasting their bodies until they were half-charred. Immediately following, I used instant transmission to appear directly before them. My massive devouring power was unleashed to its limit, held back by nothing. Beneath the petrified gazes of the entire tribe below, who looked as if they had seen a ghost, I acted as if I were eating a candied hawthorn stick, draining those 4 arrogant quasi-ninth rank princes dry until they were nothing more than a string of dried meat. The abundant bloodline energy, it was instantly refined into the purest source of energy by the heaven-devouring technique. I released an aura so immense that it caused ripples to distort the very fabric of space around me. Having had my fill, I had no intention of stopping there. I flew before the massive spatial tier, gazing into the flickering tunnel of light, a daring thought taking root in my mind. This rift was formed from immense spatial energy and complex ancient formations. So could I potentially consume this as well? After all, if I could drain the 9th grade dragon vein of the academy until it was bone dry, surely gnawing on this frame would be no issue. With that thought, I rubbed my hands together and lunged straight toward the edge of the spatial tier. With a single bite, a crisp, resounding crack echoed through the air. Before the petrified gaze of the onlookers, The supposedly indestructible spatial rift was torn open by a massive hole from my bite. Devouring complete. Space rule fragment evolved. Added 5000 essence. Hidden attribute activated. Spatial piercing acquired. Skill obtained. Void shift. Hearing the notification chime in my ears, I was overcome with exhilaration. Without another word, I manifested my true form, 100 meters in length. I sprawled across the spatial tier and began to feast ravenously, as if devouring a watermelon. Every bite was crisp and savory, tasting much like chicken. The rear guard of the alien army, preparing to descend through the tunnel, found themselves halfway through when they realized their gateway was rapidly shrinking. Furthermore, a terrifying gargantuan beast was sprawled across the frame, mindlessly chewing away with reckless abandon. The tens of millions of alien soldiers stood in stunned silence. In all their long lives, they had never witnessed anyone treat a spatial rift like a snack. Absolute terror permeated the spatial tunnel. The alien commander trembled in sheer dread. He desperately ordered a retreat, demanding the army pull back to their homeland immediately. It is a starry sky behemoth. The tunnel is collapsing. They scrambled to flee, but how could I ever let them have their way? While continuing to gnaw on the rift, I released millions of insects, ordering them to swarm through the tunnel and slaughter their way into the heart of the alien nest. Truly a ruthless invasion of their own territory. The human martial artists below watched the spectacle, utterly dumbfounded. The vice dean of the academy rubbed his eyes, convinced his vision had blurred, and he was suffering from hallucinations. Trembling, he turned to the elder beside him and asked, "Am I seeing things? Is that really the contracted spirit beast of Lu Ruyan? It is actually devouring the spatial rift." The elder standing beside him swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. He had not seen wrong. It was not merely consuming the spatial rift, but had also inadvertently swallowed a section of our city-protecting grand formation. The culprit behind all of this was Lu Ruyan, who stood atop a ruined bell tower at this moment. She watched the silhouette that was eating frantically, behaving so arrogantly in the sky, and upon her cold, beautiful face, for the first time in her life, a wry smile of indulgence and helplessness appeared. Lu Ruyan sighed to herself in her heart. In her past life, in order to resist the alien race, she could truly say she had exhausted every ounce of her spirit and effort, only to meet a tragic end where her body perished and her soul dissipated. Reborn into this life, she had expected to walk a path of martial arts set to hell difficulty. Little did she expect that the heavens would bestow upon her such an absurdly gluttonous bottomless pit. With this ravenous creature by her side, what threat could the great calamity of the alien race pose, or the imperial power of the great families? All of them were merely dishes to be served at the table. She no longer stood by to watch the spectacle. Her figure leaped gracefully from the bell tower, and she began to move among the dry, frozen corpses of the alien race, harvesting their core crystals with fervor. This was truly a golden opportunity to amass wealth. Since this ancestor of hers was so capable of eating as its master, she naturally had to stockpile a bit more for him. Just as I was about to gnaw through half of the spatial rift, from the deepest reaches of the crack, a surge suddenly erupted, a terrifying aura that caused the heavens and earth to nearly collapse. It was a supreme pressure that far transcended the 9th rank, reaching the 10th rank, the great earth realm. A low, furious voice pierced through the endless void, resounding in my ears like thunder. "Insolent insect, you dare to sabotage the tunnel of my saint race? You are tired of living." Immediately following this, a colossal black hand, covering the sky and obscuring the earth, carrying the power of laws capable of destroying all things, crossed the endless space and struck down directly toward me. It was a long-range strike from an alien great emperor. Should this palm strike land, more than half of the imperial capital would be reduced to dust. The human martial artist below immediately felt the despair of impending death. Yet facing this world-destroying, heaven-annihilating attack, within my eyes there was not a trace of fear. Instead, a ravenous, insatiable desire burned brighter than ever before. To siphon even a single draft of energy from a great Earth realm expert is far more satisfying than devouring 10,000 ordinary alien beings. I did not evade. I lunged directly forward to meet that colossal palm. I activated the full potential of my attributes, merging heaven-swallowing, earth-devouring, and universal spirit transformation to their absolute limits. My proboscis instantly transformed into a jet-black spear, piercing straight into the blue heavens. I roared frantically in my mind. "Old man, crossing the boundary to strike me carries a heavy price. Today I will drain your life essence dry as a toll for passage. Shatter for me." Brother, my indestructible proboscis, imbued with a sharp, piercing aura capable of penetrating all things, struck deep into the center of that massive black palm. The moment they collided, a ripple in the void, visible to the naked eye, detonated outward. The entire sky resembled a shattered mirror. Webbed with countless fractures, a colossal, indescribable surge of energy poured madly into my body through my proboscis. I felt as though my meridians were on the verge of rupturing from the strain. Yet amidst the agony, I felt an indescribable ecstasy. System notification. Detected energy exceeding standard parameters. Activated overlevel Devour. Evolution points skyrocketing, increased by 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Under my frantic devouring, that massive black palm began to tremble violently. Its initial density gradually faded into something ethereal. The alien Great Emperor on the other side of the spatial rift let out a roar of utter astonishment. He could not fathom that his star-shattering strike was being treated as mere nourishment by an ant he had dismissed as fodder. He attempted to retract his hand, but my 6 reinforced insect limbs clamped firmly onto his tentacles, refusing to let go. "You madman, get away from me." Amidst the infuriated bellows of the alien Great Emperor, I viciously tore away a large chunk of primal energy from his palm, then utilized the recoil to retreat several hundred meters. Seeing this, the alien Great Emperor could only begrudgingly sever the energy connection. The massive black palm, deprived of its source, immediately crumbled and disintegrated, transforming into a meteor shower scattered across the imperial capital. Meanwhile, the already ragged spatial rift, deprived of the Great Emperor's sustaining power, could no longer hold its form. With a crisp, sharp sound, with the alien reinforcements halted outside the gates, the heavens once again regained their clarity. Sunlight unseen for so long finally descended upon the ruins of the imperial capital. Silence, a deathly suffocating silence, descended upon the land. Every surviving human gazed upward at their savior, who hovered in midair, absent-mindedly rubbing his rounded belly and letting out a satisfied belch. If slaughtering the alien royal guard in an instant was a miracle, then standing toe-to-toe with the alien Great Emperor and tearing a piece of flesh from him was nothing short of a myth. Just then a brilliant golden light erupted from the deepest depths of the imperial palace. An elder, leaning heavily upon a dragon-headed staff, his hair and beard white as snow, arrived trembling through the void. He radiated the terrifying aura of a half-step 9th-grade expert. It was none other than the great Xia dynasty's ancestor, who had been in deep seclusion. Having sensed the calamity befalling the capital, he had emerged, fully prepared to sacrifice his life for the sake of the empire. But upon stepping out, he was met with the earth-shattering sight of me forcing back the alien Great Emperor, a shock so profound that it rendered him breathless. The old ancestor's hands shook so violently that his dragon-headed staff nearly slipped from his grasp. He gulped audibly, staring fixedly at me as I hovered in the sky, his voice trembling with a level of reverence and awe never before seen. I do not know which ancient guardian spirit has descended to save the great Xia from this fire and brimstone. This old servant, on behalf of all living souls, offers his deepest gratitude to our benefactor. Hearing the old man's words, I shifted back into my human form. My black trench coat fluttered in the wind as I casually smoothed back my hair, glancing down at him with a look of supreme indifference. Sparing nonsense. What guardian spirit are you talking about? My name is Gu Wen, and I am merely Lu Ruyan's personal dining companion. I just happened to treat myself to an all-you-can-eat buffet. There is no need for your thanks. Just find me some light dessert that is easy on the stomach, and we shall call it even. As these words left my lips, the entire assembly turned to stone. The royal ancestor, wearing an expression of utter disbelief, turned his gaze downward. He saw Lu Ruyan standing before a mountain of alien spirit cores, carrying a bundle overflowing with storage rings. She stood calmly, looking back at us, the pride of Great Xia, the peerless genius of the Sacred Dragon Academy, and the hope of the future. Yet she was currently commanding a divine beast capable of fighting a great emperor to act as a battlefield scavenger. In that singular moment, the worldviews of every clan head and academy official shattered and reformed. Before this, they had looked down upon Lu Ruyan, believing that she was nothing more than a failure for forming a contract with a mere insect. Yet now they only wished to kneel upon the ground and beg Lu Ruyan to instruct them, asking where exactly one might capture such a monstrous mosquito, a creature capable of draining an alien royalty dry in a mere heartbeat. I landed leisurely beside Lu Ruyan, patted my slightly distended belly, bloated from such a massive feast, and raised a brow at her. Little girl, I suppose this meal was roughly 80% satisfying. Having just swallowed a stream of source energy from that great emperor, I feel as though the power is about to overflow once more. I shall need to find a place to do battle to digest this excess. Lu Ruyan gazed at me, her eyes shimmering with a strange light. She understood that after this upheaval, the power dynamic of the entire Great Xia would be completely reshuffled by my very existence. Whether it be the royal family or the great clans with millennia of heritage, all would have to bow before her and me. Yet she remained entirely indifferent to such worldly power. She reached out, gently brushing the dust from my garments. The corners of her lips curled into a smile that seemed to entrance time itself. Just as we turned to depart from this desolate battlefield, the royal ancestor descended hurriedly from the heavens, leading a procession of royal princes and academy experts, lining up in a long, solemn array. The tone of the utmost desperation, the ancestor spoke. "Miss Lu, stay your steps. It was our blindness that led us astray, and we have offended you and your divine beast. To express our deepest regret and gratitude, the great Xia royal family wishes to appoint you as the protector saint with full unrestricted access to the royal treasury, and we shall offer no complaints whatsoever." Upon hearing the words royal treasury, my steps halted instantly. My eyes, which had been drowsy and listless, brightened in an instant, burning brighter than the stars. I turned to look at the old man, my expression suddenly overflowing with kindness. Now, old man, you just said that in the royal treasury, I may choose whatever I desire? Is this statement truly sincere? Is there no limit to the quantity? The royal ancestor felt a chill run down his spine under my gaze, yet he had no choice but to nod repeatedly. It is absolutely true. We shall never go back on our word. I immediately set off down the path. The heads of the great clans, usually so arrogant, now kept their heads bowed so low they dared not look in our direction. Just as we neared the city gates, the seventh princess, who had been frightened into a faint earlier, was just being revived by her servants pressing on her philtrum. Such a simple-minded woman. It seems her intellect has yet to clear, for she remains oblivious to the gravity of the situation. As soon as she caught sight of Lu Ruyan walking ahead of the imperial ancestor, she shrieked, broke free from the servants, and lunged forward. The seventh princess pointed a finger at Lu Ruyan, cursing shrilly. You shameless vixen, how dare you walk before the ancestor? Why have you not knelt and kowtowed to beg for forgiveness? However, before her arrogant words could even fade, the imperial ancestor swung his hand in a thunderous slap. A crisp, resounding crack echoed through the air as the seventh princess was sent flying more than 10 meters away. She spat out a mixture of blood and shattered teeth upon the ground. The ancestor was so enraged that his beard trembled. Witnessing this, I felt a surge of exhilaration in my heart. This is the privilege and absolute ecstasy that comes with having peerless power. Before long, we followed the old man to the supreme treasury of the great Xia Empire. This vault was constructed deep within the very core of the earth beneath the imperial palace. The massive gates were cast from a single block of 10,000-year black iron, engraved with dense, ancient defensive formations. Sitting cross-legged right before the entrance was an elder dressed in gray robes, his hair a mixture of white and black. The aura emanating from this old man was profoundly deep. He was, in fact, an 8th-stage martial arts master at the peak. It appeared he was a loyal guardian of the imperial tomb. Just as the imperial ancestor stepped forward to introduce our distinguished status, the gray-robed elder let out a cold snort, opening his eyes with a look of disdain. The elder cast a chilling gaze over both me and Lu Ruyan, before speaking to the imperial ancestor in a cynical tone. Ancestor, are you not making a mockery of things by bringing these juniors here? How can you bring outsiders of unknown origin into such a vital location of the imperial clan? And that young girl looks as though she has yet to even dry behind the ears. As for that pretty boy standing beside her, who is he? How can the ancestral rules be so easily discarded? Upon hearing these words, the imperial ancestor's complexion turned deathly pale. He frantically signaled the blind old fool with his eyes. But the old man was evidently accustomed to his own arrogance, or perhaps having been in seclusion for so long, his mind had completely withered. He drew the cold, long sword resting at his side without hesitation. The old man took a step forward. He shouted, Ancestor, the rules cannot be cast aside. This is my final boundary. If you wish to enter the treasury, so be it, but you must step over my corpse first. Hearing this archaic declaration, I couldn't help but find it amusing. In this day and age, there are still those who actively demand such a fate. I turned to look at the old ancestor, who was drenched in sweat, utterly mortified. I let out a sigh, speaking in a tone of feigned helplessness. Old man, this really isn't my fault. You heard him yourself. He insisted that I step over him, so I had no choice. No sooner had I finished speaking than I acted without warning. I lifted my leg and delivered a strike of such extreme velocity that the air didn't even have time to ripple. With a heaven-shaking, thunderous boom, the arrogant old man in the formal robes, along with his sword, was kicked directly into the adjacent secret chamber. He remained embedded in the wall like a portrait. He could not free himself, despite the peak 8th-tier protective chi he had been so proud of. Before my kick, his defense proved as fragile as a scrap of cheap, brittle paper. The old ancestor, standing to the side and witnessing the entire spectacle, was shaking so violently his knees knocked together. He hurriedly pulled out a handkerchief to wipe away his sweat, offering a sycophantic smile. The old ancestor stammered, Holy Venerable, a masterful kick indeed. Truly, a strike of divine craftsmanship. That old man was always arrogant. He was clearly in need of a lesson. I didn't bother to pay any more attention to this spineless sycophant. My gaze settled forward, and I reached out to press my palms against the surface of the heavy door. The divine technique, spirit manifestation of all things, was activated instantly. Following a series of ear-piercing, grating sounds, the gate, reputed to withstand the full-force attack of a 9th-tier expert, was dismantled. I drained the metallic essence from the door, leaving behind nothing but a pile of crimson rust. With a heavy thud, the door collapsed, and a dense wave of spiritual energy, sealed for thousands of years, rushed directly toward us. I stepped inside with a calm composure, scanning the room, and could not help but offer a nod of genuine praise. The foundation laid over millennia by the great Xia imperial family is truly deserving of its reputation. To the left, piled as high as mountains, were spirit stones of the highest grade, radiating a 7-colored glow. To the right stood rows of divine weapons and armor, shimmering with dazzling light. In the grand hall at the center, there were hundreds of boxes of elixirs crafted from sandalwood. Lu Yanyan, following behind, caught sight of this treasure, and her eyes brightened with fervor. Although in her past life she was an empress without peer, in this current reincarnation, she urgently required a massive amount of resources to rebuild her foundation. She activated her high-grade spatial storage bag, which possessed a vast capacity, and began to loot the treasury with unrestrained fervor. She specifically selected top-tier elixirs with miraculous effects for martial cultivation, as well as supreme cultivation manuals. As for my own methods, they were even more direct than hers. It was far more brutal and direct. The old ancestor had originally assumed I was showing mercy, choosing only to take a few rare treasures. But in reality, I strode directly toward the mountain of supreme-grade spirit stones, opened my mouth wide, and activated my god-tier passive skill, heaven-swallowing earth-devouring, to its full capacity. My mouth transformed into a terrifying bottomless abyss as I aimed straight at that mountain of supreme-grade spirit stones and inhaled with immense force. Whoosh! A violent gale erupted, and tens of millions of supreme-grade spirit stones transformed into a radiant, endless river of spiritual energy, tracing a brilliant arc through the air before plunging straight into my maw. Ding! System notifications erupted in my mind like the thunderous crackle of New Year's fireworks. Absorbed a massive quantity of supreme-grade spirit stones, gained 10,000 evolution points. I turned my head, wiped my mouth, and set my sights on the pile of armaments nearby. Whether you were a heaven-grade divine sword or an earth-grade treasure, I crushed them to fragments in a few bites before swallowing them whole. Ding! The system chimed again. Absorbed a low-rank heaven-grade artifact, gained 2,000 evolution points. Immediately after, the medicinal gourds scattered across the hall could not escape their fate. Finding the process of opening them too slow, I swallowed the gourds and the elixirs inside in one gulp. The old ancestor, standing at the entrance of the treasury, watched with a heart filled with agonizing pain. With blood dripping from his composure, he clutched his chest tightly, gasping for air. The sight was so traumatic he nearly suffered a heart attack and collapsed on the spot. This was the entire accumulation of the Great Xia dynasty over several millennia, yet I was devouring it as if it were nothing more than a light after-meal snack. But even though he was heartbroken to the point of death, he dared not utter a single word. He didn't even dare to let out so much as a whimper. He could only weep silently in his heart, desperately trying to comfort himself with the mantra that material possessions are temporary, choosing to believe that losing them was a necessary sacrifice to save his life. Within a few minutes, I had cleared away more than half of the valuable items in the outer section of the treasury. I rubbed my stomach and let out a loud belch, my gaze immediately turning toward the deepest part of the vault. There, hidden within a secret chamber, was an ancient array of immense complexity and subtlety. Had I not achieved successive breakthroughs earlier, reaching the 9th level of sensory perception, I never would have discovered that there was something amiss in that corner. I had no patience for words. I strode forward and kicked the door open with a single strike. As the chamber door creaked open, a primordial violent aura instantly surged forth, permeating every corner of the room. In the center of the chamber stood an altar of bluestone, upon which rested a black stone no larger than a fist. The surface of the stone was etched with bizarre dark golden patterns, pulsing rhythmically as if it were a living creature drawing breath. The old ancestor, his face covered in soot, followed closely behind me. He gazed at the stone, released a deep sigh, and took the initiative to explain. This stone was recovered by the founding emperor of the Great Xia dynasty. It was unearthed from a pile of corpses within an incredibly perilous ancient god-devil ruin. Everyone knows that it harbors a power capable of annihilating heaven and earth. Yet for thousands of years, no matter what arrays or manuals the imperial family employed, none could absorb its energy. In fact, even the slightest touch is enough for its terrifying gravitational force to drain one's lifeblood dry. Thus, there was no other choice but to worship it here, as if it were a venerated ancestor. Having heard these words, I immediately let out a laugh. It absorbs, and it drains the lifeblood of those who touch it. This must be because it finds your mortal constitutions far too feeble. Without a moment's hesitation, I strode forward, reached out my right hand, and forcibly seized the black stone. The very moment I made contact, I felt a violent resisting force erupting from within the stone. It seems this object truly intends to turn the tables and drain my vast reserves of vitality. I let out a cold snort, my eyes filled with utter disdain, daring to wield an axe before a true master. You are facing an old ancestor who specializes in the art of draining blood. You are truly the epitome of arrogance. I forced the stone down my throat, as the heaven-devouring skill within my gut erupted at full capacity, frantically suppressing and refining it. The moment the black stone entered my destiny space, it unleashed an energy of apocalyptic proportions, possessing a power in no way inferior to that of a great emperor, and, when combined with the residual energy of the foreign great emperor had consumed earlier, these two terrifying forces began to collide violently within my body. The system's voice sounded more intense and majestic than ever before. The system broadcasted a continuous notification. Host has successfully consumed the primordial god devil core. Detected that the host is merging with the remnants of the great emperor's origin power. All conditions are now met to ascend to Tier 10 God realm and initiate the 10th ultimate evolution. Due to the transformative nature of this devouring, the core host will immediately enter a state of deep slumber to begin the period of metamorphosis and reconstruct its physical form. The estimated time required for this life or death seclusion is 7 days. Hearing this sequence of notifications, my brow immediately furrowed. This was in truth far from good news for me. Although I have temporarily repelled the alien army outside, within the imperial capital, there are no shortage of treacherous families harboring sinister intentions. I turned my head and cast a deep gaze toward the distance, where Lu Ruyan was still engrossed in selecting items. I used a grave and serious tone to transmit my voice to her. Little knew I am about to enter a slumber for several days to undergo a breakthrough. During this time, I need you to stand guard for me. Do not allow any lowly scoundrels to disturb my seclusion. Once I awaken, I shall certainly take you to purge them all. If gods stand in my way, I will slay the gods. Having finished those words, and completed my instructions, I could no longer suppress the energy surging like a galaxy within my body. My vision darkened, and I lost all control, collapsing to the ground. The moment I fell, countless strands of dark golden law energy erupted frantically from my pores, and in the blink of an eye, they enveloped my entire body, forming a massive sphere of light. The surface of this rigid cocoon radiated an intense heat and a truly terrifying pressure, causing the thick walls of the secret chamber to turn red-hot and deform. Seeing this, Lu Ruyan's expression immediately turned solemn and cold. As a great emperor in her past life, she naturally understood what this phenomenon represented. This was the most critical moment of metamorphosis, and also the time when my defenses were at their weakest. Without a moment's hesitation, she stepped forward, gripping her sharp longsword as she stood firm before the cocoon like a cold, unyielding guardian. The old ancestor standing at the entrance and witnessing this scene felt a glint of cunning flash through his eyes, yet ultimately he did not act. Daring not to utter a word, he simply turned away in silence and retreated from the desolate underground fortress. At the same time, internal news from the imperial palace spread like wildfire. The terrifying powerhouse who had decimated the alien race in a single moment had fallen into a deep sleep. The atmosphere of the imperial capital, which had just returned to tranquility, was once again stirred by undercurrents. The high-ranking clans, who had been frightened out of their wits by my display of ferocity, felt their malicious desires begin to stir once more after receiving this verified intelligence. This was especially true for the Zhao family, who had suffered great losses and become a laughingstock at the Wanbao Pavilion. Furthermore, there was the faction led by Wang Qingke, the irreconcilable enemy of Lu Ruyan within the clan. It remains unknown by what means, but they had secretly conspired together. In the dead of night, several figures draped in black cloaks plotted within a secret chamber. Wang Qingke's face was twisted in malice as he gritted his teeth and slammed his hand against the table, declaring, "This is truly a once-in-a-millennium opportunity. The heavens have finally opened their eyes. That terrifying 9th rank beast is no longer here to support her. What is that trash Lu Ruyan worth anyway? A mere worm attempting to climb over our heads." The head of the Zhao family, his expression full of venom, nodded in agreement, stating, "We must seize this chance while she is vulnerable to strike her down. We must ensure that Beast does not awaken. Even if we cannot slay that slumbering demonic beast, this time we must at minimum torture Lu Ruyan to death. We must ensure this assassination plan is foolproof, with no room for error." They'd even gone so far as to exhaust their family resources, paying a heavy price to summon 2 top-tier assassins from the Shadow Pavilion. They were 2 legendary masters of assassination, both at the peak of the 8th rank. The following night, the moon was obscured by thick clouds. Outside the royal treasury, the spirit guards patrolling the perimeter fell silently one by one. That old ancestor seemed to have been intentionally detained by some affair, failing to arrive with reinforcements. It was clear that a major figure within the royal family was intentionally turning a blind eye, allowing this transgression to unfold. It is often said that the hearts of emperors are the most ruthless. Benefit is always placed above all else. They wish to use us to dispel the threat from the foreign tribes, yet they fear that Lu Ruyan and I might grow too powerful and heaven-defying, becoming figures they can no longer control. Now, taking advantage of the moment I am off guard, while I am lost in a deep slumber, they go with the flow, using the blades of these noble families to kill, carefully probing the depth of my defenses. Outside the door of the secret chamber, Wang Qingke and the Zhao family head led dozens of elite experts as they steadily approached. Lu Ruyan sat like a statue in front of the luminous cocoon, her eyes tightly shut as she regulated her breath. Her long sword, which had tasted the blood of countless enemies, lay across her knees, her keen senses picking up the chaotic sound of footsteps approaching from outside. She slowly opened them, those eyes devoid of even the slightest flicker of emotion. Within those exquisite orbs, there was not a single trace of warmth or fear. It was as if they were shards of 10,000-year-old glacial ice from the deepest, darkest abyss. The supreme majesty belonging to the peak empress of her past life suddenly erupted in that very moment. Holding her sword, she stepped calmly and gracefully out of the ruined secret chamber. She gazed at the multitude of black-clad assassins surrounding her like hungry tigers stalking their prey. Lu Ruyan let out a cold, sharp laugh filled with utter disdain. With a casual flick of her wrist, she danced her blade, creating an incredibly beautiful and fluid sword blossom before her. The razor-sharp sword intent instantly carved a deep, straight trench into the earth. Her voice, calm yet brimming with dominance, echoed forth. "Who dares to cross this line? You shall not leave a whole corpse." Seeing Lu Ruyan standing alone, Wang Qingke could not help but burst into arrogant and unrestrained laughter. Hiding behind the crowd, Wang Qingke pointed at Lu Ruyan and shouted, "You wretched woman, you are on the verge of death. How dare you remain so insolent? Without that useless brat by your side to protect you today, let us see what you have left to withstand this net of heaven and earth. Brothers, tear her apart, mince her into pieces." Hearing their master's command, dozens of elite experts immediately unsheathed their weapons. A barrage of high-grade armaments and dazzling multicolored techniques descended upon her like a torrential storm. Lu Ruyan stood her ground, her expression remaining entirely unmoved. Over these past few days inside the royal treasury, she had consumed countless top-tier elixirs as if they were mere daily meals. Her meridians had been reconstructed, and her cultivation base was now firmly entrenched at the peak of the 7th stage. More terrifying still was that she was no ordinary 7th stage practitioner. Her battle experience, honed through hundreds of trials in her previous immortal life, combined with her mastery of supreme techniques, were far beyond what mere mortals of this level could ever hope to compare to. Lu Ruyan's toes seemed to brush the ground with the lightest of touches, and her beautiful figure transformed into a flickering, illusory green mist in the blink of an eye. Without a hint of fear, she charged directly into the sky-covering barrage of lethal strikes. Fap fap. A series of soft, tearing sounds echoed, as a cold sword light flickered through the crowd like a bolt of lightning. The two 7th stage warriors who had charged at the front, heads fell to the ground. They had not even managed to utter a final harrowing cry from their throats. Lu Ruyan drifted among the crowd, moving as gracefully as if she were strolling through her own private garden. Every seemingly casual stroke of her blade was perfectly precise, claiming a life with every motion. Her swordsmanship was far too swift and accurate, possessing not a single redundant movement. This was, in every sense, a supreme technique of slaughter, stripped of all unnecessary flourishes. In less than half an incense stick of time, the area outside the treasury vault had become a river of blood, strewn everywhere with mangled corpses. The expressions of Wang Qingke and the Zhao clan patriarch, standing behind, had finally undergone a complete transformation. Scalps tinkled as they witnessed this, unable to comprehend such a paradoxical scene. A martial arts waste who not long ago had been mocked and abandoned by the clan. How could her combat prowess have surged to such a terrifying and soul-shaking level in such a short time? Yet at this very moment, a sudden change occurred, as the two top assassins of the Shadow Pavilion, who had been lurking in the darkness all along and had yet to make a move, finally struck. They had disguised themselves as the corpses scattered upon the ground, like two venomous vipers waiting in patient silence. In an instant, from the deepest, blindest corner of the shadows, they lunged out without a sound, attacking from left and right. At incredibly treacherous angles, they locked onto the fatal points near Lu Ruyan's heart. This was a strike truly long prepared by the two 8th-rank peak assassins. Two short blades, coated in deadly poison, shimmered with a deep, eerie green light, carrying a piercing whistle as they thrust ruthlessly toward her exposed back and slender waist. Though Lu Ruyan possessed seasoned combat experience and keen senses, her current incarnation was, after all, only at the 7th-rank realm. Given the vast disparity in cultivation, her speed remained half a beat too slow. Relying on instinct, she managed to tilt her body to avoid the strike, which had been aimed at her throat, but she could not evade it entirely, suffering a deep gash from one of the blades across the flesh of her left arm. Black blood immediately erupted from the wound, staining her pristine white sleeve. Having landed their first blow and seeing they had failed to kill her instantly, the two assassins retreated as quickly as lightning. They vanished back into the shadows, preparing to exploit the slightest opening for their next brutal, stealthy assault. Seeing that Lu Ruyan had been wounded, Wang Qingke was momentarily overwhelmed with joy, his face flushed red with agitation. Then he screamed frantically, "She has been struck by lethal poison. It is a toxin for which there is no antidote. She cannot hold on for much longer, hurry up. Take advantage of her weakened state to claim her life. Kill her now." Lu Ruyan felt a wave of numbness and excruciating pain surge through her left arm. The poison of the Shadow Pavilion was truly tyrannical, and it acted with terrifying speed, surging through her bloodstream to ravage her meridians, corroding her internal organs. Yet, even as cold sweat poured down her forehead, she had no intention of retreating even half a step. She remained deathly calm, shifting her long sword from her left hand to her right. maintaining a gaze that could pierce through life and death, never once breaking her stare at the crowd before her. She had made a promise to the gluttonous companion behind her, still lost in deep slumber, that she would guard this entrance herself, and she would never allow anyone in this world to cross the line of life and death she had drawn. Lu Ruyan drew a deep breath, gritting her teeth against the agonizing pain. No longer concerning herself with purging the poison, she forced her churning blood and ki to surge within her body. Preparing. A forbidden sword technique of mutual destruction from her previous life was being forcibly channeled through her veins. Even if this strike would shatter the martial foundation of her current life, she harbored no regrets. However, at this most desperate moment, just as the battle was about to erupt, from deep within the secret chamber behind her, a muffled sound like rolling thunder suddenly exploded, followed by ear-piercing, cracking sounds. The sound of shattering echoed incessantly. The impenetrable god-tier light cocoon was completely breaking apart and flaking away. At that same instant, an aura that made the very space of the imperial capital tremble violently, as if a high god, long dormant through the ages, had suddenly opened its eyes. A terrifying pressure far beyond all worldly things descended upon this land with a thunderous roar. The two Tier 8 shadow assassins, who had been preparing to launch a sneak attack, were instantly frozen in place. Paralyzed, suppressed by the sheer pressure to the point where they could not move a single finger, their expressions twisted in terror. The daggers in their hands could no longer be held, clattering as they fell to the ground. In that fleeting moment, everyone felt as if an invisible Mount Tai were crushing their very spines. Thud, thud, two incredibly heavy sounds of impact echoed through the hall. Those two 8th-stage powerhouses, devoid of any strength to resist, were forced directly to their knees, prostrating themselves upon the ground. It was not merely those in the front ranks who were suppressed. Even Wang Qingke and the Zhao family head, who were commanding from behind, were denied even the dignity of kneeling. They were struck down instantly, losing consciousness as they collapsed onto the floor. Their internal organs ruptured, and their very bones groaned and shattered under the crushing weight of the immense gravity. Then, amidst an atmosphere thick with the stench of death, a voice languid yet chillingly cold, saturated with a boundless bloodthirsty killing intent, drifted slowly out from the deep darkness of the secret chamber. I have only taken a few days to enjoy a proper sleep, and yet you despicable, lowly mongrels, who dare not show your faces in the light, are already so tired of living. To dare lay a hand on one I protect. Your lives have truly become too long, have they not? Accompanied by heavy echoing footsteps, I emerged from the darkened chamber, with my hands tucked leisurely into my pockets. My form still appeared human and slender, yet a layer of dark divine aura swirled around me, and even a single breath of turbid air I exhaled was enough to cause the surrounding void to fracture and collapse. The divine realm, this terrifying power to shatter the heavens and destroy the earth with a mere gesture, was so exhilarating it made every cell in my body sing with joy. Yet my expression remained deathly cold, for at first glance, my eyes fell upon that stubborn woman. Lu Ruyan was forcing herself to remain upright, using a broken blade as a crutch. From her porcelain-white left arm, a stream of eye-catching black poisonous blood seeped out. I shifted instantly to Lu Ruyan's side. I furrowed my brows, casting a cold, sidelong glance at her, my voice laced with a measure of irritation and reproach. I scoffed coldly and barked, "Are you a fool, woman? If you could not best them, did you not know to hide behind me? Had I awakened but a minute later, were you intending to throw your life away here?" Upon hearing my familiar overbearing voice, the stiff, slender figure of Lu Ruyan immediately softened. On her icy stoic face, for the first time in her life, a flicker of vulnerability appeared. Lu Ruyan suppressed her dizziness, refusing to concede. I simply had not yet unleashed my final technique. I was prepared to risk everything and perish together. Looking at her stubborn, defiant expression, that of a duck with a dead mouth but a living spirit, I felt an inexplicable surge of frustration. Without uttering a word of nonsense, I directly seized her wounded arm. She gasped in pain, instinctively attempting to pull her arm away. I cast her a cold, sharp glare and growled low, pressing my palm firmly against her wound. My god-tier passive ability, Heaven-Devouring Domain, instantly activated at full capacity. This miasma, which would have rendered even an 8th-order great expert helpless and awaiting death, was, in my eyes, nothing more than cheap swill seasoned with a few extra spices. Within a mere 2 seconds, the pitch-black venom coursing through her arm was completely drained away. Not only that, but I also took the liberty of channeling a surge of Prime Spirit Essence back into her body. The 8th Order Absolute Poison Essence was automatically converted to grant the host a god-tier immunity to all toxins. The pallid complexion of Lu Ruyan immediately regained its healthy, rosy glow. She felt the surging vitality rising within her body with astonishment, staring at me in a daze, unable to speak for a long time. I decisively let go of her hand and turned around, facing the assassins kneeling on the ground with an emotionless expression. I cast another glance at Qingke and the Zhao family head, who were being crushed into the earth by the weight of my pressure. My extreme killing intent, hidden deep within my eyes, could no longer be contained. I let out a cold laugh and spoke with supreme arrogance. Very well, now it is time to settle our blood debt once and for all. You sewer-dwelling cowards, daring to raid my home while I was in slumber. Do you truly believe my 10th stage divine realm, my personal domain, is merely for show? The two peak-level assassins of the Shadow Pavilion were now drenched in a cold sweat. They desperately kowtowed against the hard blue stone floor, striking their heads until their scalps split and blood flowed profusely, yet they dared not stop. In despair, the assassins cried out with trembling voices, begging for their lives. Divine Venerable, spare us, please spare our lives. We only acted because we were paid. Our greed blinded our reason. We begged the Divine Venerable to treat us like useless gas and cast us aside. Watching their pathetic, cowardly display of desperation, I felt not a shred of pity, but instead took a slow, deliberate step forward, looking down at them coldly from above. I shook my head, my tone reaching a freezing, lethal depth. Spare you? You caused the person I protect to bleed profusely, and now you intend to dismiss it with a light-hearted excuse of just doing a job. In this world, does such a lucrative deal where one takes nothing but gains everything truly exist? As the words left my lips, I did not even lift a finger. I simply unleashed a surge of violent intent. The pressure of the 10th realm descended instantly, as heavy as a 10,000-foot mountain. The two 8th realm assassins, who moments ago were arrogantly boasting that they would end the life of their target in a single blow, were caught off guard. Before they could even let out a death rattle, the terrifying spatial gravity crushed their bodies into a mangled pulp of blood and gore. I opened my mouth wide and inhaled sharply, drawing two dense streams of vital essence and life force straight into my body. Wang Xingke and the Zhao clan head, witnessing this brutal display, were so terrified by the carnage that they completely lost their composure on the spot. They were so consumed by fear that they lost all control of their bladders. A pungent, acrid stench began to permeate the air like a sudden chilling frost. Wang Xingke reached out with trembling, filthy hands in a desperate attempt to grab the hem of Lu Ruyan's dress. He wept bitterly, attempting to use his position as a family elder to force her into a sense of moral obligation. Wang Xingke wailed until his voice grew hoarse, begging for salvation. Ruyan, I am after all your own kin and an elder of the family. In the past, I have offered you guidance within the clan more than a few times. Quickly, tell this divine beast to cease its hand and spare this old man's life. I shall kneel here and kowtow to beg for your forgiveness. I know I have erred. The Zhao clan head followed suit, kowtowing loudly enough to echo across the land, weeping and groveling for mercy. Lu Ruyan looked at these two hypocrites, who had once been so arrogant, and realized they were only pleading for mercy now that the blade was at their throats. It is too late. Your lives and deaths are now decided by God King Xuan. Upon hearing this sensible response from Lu Ruyan, I waved my hand, feeling immensely satisfied. I offered a cruel smile, pronouncing the final verdict upon those two pieces of trash. Did you hear that? The mistress of this house has already spoken her decree. Even if you were to sprout wings today, none of you shall escape this place. From my fingertips, two dark beams of death shot out in an instant, without the slightest warning. Although these beams were as thin as an ordinary chopstick, they contained the supreme, world-destroying energy of the 10th realm, piercing directly through the center of their foreheads with surgical precision, striking their vital points. Those two did not even have the chance to struggle in pain. Their lives were extinguished instantly. Their corpses had barely hit the ground, and before they had even cooled, I initiated conversion of all things, without the slightest hesitation. In the blink of an eye, their flesh and souls were drained dry, leaving only brittle, withered skeletons behind. A cold night wind swept across the clearing, and the skeletons crumbled instantly into a cloud of white dust that filled the air, scattering into the wind, leaving behind not even a shred of bone or ash, ensuring nothing of them remains in this world. Having disposed of these clowns who lacked the wisdom to value their own lives, I turned my gaze toward the deepest reaches of the imperial capital. Ever since my perception reached the 10th stage of perfection, I have been able to effortlessly blanket every corner of the great Xia imperial capital, and I felt it with absolute clarity. Right there, in the deepest part of the imperial palace, within the heavily guarded Golden Lone Hall, the great Xia emperor, that opportunistic sycophant of the royal family, and their old ancestor were huddled before a bronze mirror, acting with deceitful secrecy. They were monitoring every tragic event unfolding here, but the moment my gaze swept toward them like a sharpened blade, the old ancestor miles away was so terrified that he collapsed onto the floor. The top spiritual treasure, the bronze mirror used for long-distance surveillance, shattered instantly into fine powder. I offered a cold, disdainful smile. This old fox is playing a truly treacherous game, using the blade of another to kill, daring to sacrifice the lives of the noble clans just to probe my strength while I remained dormant. There is no one in this world who can take advantage of me and retreat unscathed. I turned my head to look at Lu Ruyan, who was lost in deep thought, and reached out with a strong arm, wrapping it around her slender, supple waist. Lu Ruyan's entire body stiffened in an instant, and instinctively she began to struggle, but my firm, powerful grip denied her any opportunity to resist or evade. I leaned close to her ear and spoke with domineering authority. Since these cowardly turtles of the royal family refuse to be honest, on such a dark and restless night, I shall take you to the imperial palace to stretch our limbs. Before Lu Ruyan could even open her mouth to speak, the void behind me tore open into a colossal black rift. The divine ability of void teleportation was unleashed instantly, without the slightest reservation. I vanished with Lu Ruyan, departing the ruins of the Shura battlefield outside the treasury. The very next second, inside the Imperial Palace's main hall, where the atmosphere was thick with tension, the great Sha Emperor and that old ancestor were drenched. I must consider how best to handle this. The old ancestor's voice trembled so violently that his teeth chattered incessantly. It is finished, we are doomed. A great catastrophe has descended upon us. That terrifying beast, that god of slaughter, has awakened earlier than expected. Furthermore, the aura radiating from him is at least 10 times more horrifying than before his slumber. Based on that gaze just now, he has surely entered the divine realm, a legendary state beyond description. The Emperor of the Great Xia grew as frantic as an ant on a hot pan. Desperate and anxious, he gripped the old ancestor, demanding to know what they should do now. Because we stood by and watched earlier, refusing to intervene and condoning the actions of those assassins. An almighty being such as him has surely seen through every one of our schemes. He had barely spoken half a sentence, unable to finish his thought. Above the grand hall, the dragon-carved roof, famed for being utterly indestructible, shattered into fragments. Like a divine judge descending from the 9 heavens, I stepped through the swirling dust and debris. I descended slowly, landing directly before the Emperor's colossal dragon throne. With an air of absolute indifference, I delivered a single kick, shattering the throne forged from pure gold into splinters. I stood arrogantly upon the dais, looking down at them with complete and utter disdain, witnessing the old ancestor's face. Now as pale as a sheet, I offered a cold, mocking smile and began my interrogation. Tell me, old man, what grand affairs of state are you discussing here in the dead of night, instead of sleeping? Earlier, when my treasury vault was being besieged with such fervor, why did you not even bother to show your face to see what was happening? The treatment that the Holy Venerable of the He Kingdom promised me seems meager, and frankly quite insulting. The old ancestor's knees turned to jelly, and with a thunderous thud, he collapsed onto the stone floor. The great Xia Emperor watched as the most powerful old ancestor of his clan assumed the most humble of positions, prostrating himself upon the freezing cold tiles. The old ancestor felt as though he were standing naked in the midst of a blizzard. Shivering uncontrollably, he struggled with all his might, dredging up clumsy, deceitful explanations from the depths of his panicked mind. Sweating profusely, the old ancestor spoke with a voice so tremulous it sounded as if he were on the verge of tears. Divine Venerable, please calm your wrath, you must temper your anger. This old servant was merely encountering a bottleneck, secluded in a secret chamber, to contemplate the laws of the heavenly Tao. I truly had no idea that such a treacherous and horrific event had occurred outside. Had I known there were those who dared to lay a finger on your people, I would have been the first to draw my blade and charge forth. I would have torn that clan limb from limb and ground their bones to dust. I listened to these excuses, which were as clumsy and nonsensical as those of a fool. The cold, mocking sneer at the corners of my mouth deepened, chilling them to the bone. I had no patience for his incessant, tiresome prattle. I simply raised my hand, and a surge of power coalesced within my palm. The old ancestor immediately felt the blood, essence, and the spirit energy he had painstakingly cultivated for millennia slipping from his control, pouring out of his body in a frantic torrent. The top-grade spirit stones paved beneath him cracked and shattered, crumbling into fine powder. His entire body was seized by an invisible, crushing force that constricted his throat, hoisting him violently into midair. The old ancestor let out stifled, pained groans as he teetered on the precipice of death. His wizened, withered face swelled instantly, turning a deep mottled purple from the desperate lack of oxygen. Within his eyes, a bottomless abyss of terror manifested at the proximity of his demise. Below, the Emperor of the Great Xia dynasty was so consumed by fear that he began to kowtow frantically. The sound of his skull striking the stone floor echoed relentlessly, until his flesh was mangled and raw. Blood pooled upon the ground as he offered his own suffering as a sacrifice, begging me to show mercy and grant them a path to survival. The Emperor wept in a display of utter despair. I beg for mercy, Divine Venerable. Please grant us a chance to live. Everything is at the sole discretion of Lady Lu. She may rule over this realm as she sees fit. Upon hearing this decisive declaration of loyalty from the Emperor, the oppressive force in my palm faltered for a brief moment. I slowly turned my gaze toward Lu Ruyan, who had been standing silently to the side. She stood with cold indifference, watching the scene unfold before her. The disposition of the Empress, who once held the power of life and death, dominating the world and viewing all living beings as mere blades of grass, was revealed in this moment without a trace of concealment. I knew that for her to return to the pinnacle in such a short time, she would require a vast empire to frantically harvest resources. If I were to act on a whim and drain these high-level dregs dry right here, who would be left to toil across the nation as beasts of burden to gather the treasures and materials required for our advancement? Treating him like a discarded piece of refuse, I flung the half-dead old man aside, slamming him into the solid wall, and declared with a resonant voice, "Since you, the Emperor, possess such sharp foresight and are so willing to defer, I shall make an exception today and spare the lives of your imperial clan, allowing you to grovel for your existence. But hear this well. From this moment forth, the vast realm of Great Xia changes its master. Lu Ruyan is now your sole supreme sovereign. Furthermore, let this be a friendly notice to you all. Before the sun sets tomorrow, you are to bring every top-grade spirit vein and rare treasure from every province in the land. Deliver everything to me. Not a single fragment may be missing. To the central plaza of this imperial palace. If I discover that even a single gold bar or a single stalk of medicinal herb is missing, I will not hesitate to drain the life force of every one of your thousands of royal clansmen, turning them all into withered husks to be hung from the city walls and dried by the wind." Having been granted the mercy of surviving this cataclysmic ordeal, the Emperor of Daxia and his ancestor dared not hesitate nor utter a single word of defiance. After dealing with those spineless nobles who bullied the weak and feared the strong, whose backbones were softer than paper, those two fools who had been courting death, kowtowed until their heads bled. Lu Ruyan has now rightfully and officially ascended to the highest seat of power in the entire Daxia Empire. With me, a 10th-rank divine beast of unfathomable power, standing behind her, I suppress all opposition with absolute authority. The various vassals and generals, who had privately harbored petty intentions of rebellion, were frightened out of their wits. By the second day, before dawn had even broken, they had already obediently surrendered their million-strong armies and the accumulated treasures of their clans. In less than 3 short days, Lu Ruyan, relying on her iron-fisted resolve and the vast supreme resources she had seized, propelled her martial cultivation to an inconceivable level. She advanced to the miraculous realm of a half-step 9th grade, rising as if she were propelled by a rocket. This method of advancement was explained to the fullest extent. After all, in her previous life, she was a great emperor standing at the pinnacle of power. What she lacked was never a complex understanding of the heavenly Tao, but purely the accumulation of primal energy for her physical form. Meanwhile, for these 3 days, I have shamelessly spent my time wallowing in luxury, consuming nothing but top-tier spiritual herbs and incredibly rare spirit cores. I lived a life of extravagance where my days consisted of eating ravenously, sleeping, waking up, and then eating ravenously once more. However, at this point, my stomach, having evolved to the divine realm, had truly become a bottomless abyss of immense scale. The Daxia Empire had exhausted all national efforts to gather this ocean of resources. When I first began to consume them, my attribute panel showed small increments of evolution points. But as the days progressed, the system simply went on strike, repeatedly notifying me that the spiritual energy was too sparse. The evolution points gained from consuming this mountain of items were not even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Extremely frustrated, I spat out a 10,000-year-old premium spirit ginseng, a treasure renowned for its ability to bring the dead back to life. I felt that this exorbitantly expensive item, as I chewed it, was no different than eating a few strands of white radish found on the side of the road. Within my body there was absolutely no remaining sensation of advancement, nor the exhilarating surge in power I had felt at the beginning. Just as I was wallowing in misery, wondering where I could possibly find higher-tier sustenance that might actually satisfy my hunger, a sudden unexpected sound erupted from outside the Great Hall, a frantic report of military intelligence, as the border prince, who should have been leading his heavy troops to guard the northern frontier, charged into the Grand Hall, drenched in blood. With a heavy thud, he collapsed before the golden silk wood desk, which was piled high with memorials in front of Lu Ruyan. The prince wept tears of blood, his voice hoarse as he reported the horrific military situation. "Your Majesty, a great calamity has befallen us. In the ancient forbidden zone of the northern heaven, the 10,000 dragon abyss has suddenly experienced a violent upheaval. The spatial tunnel, sealed for over 10,000 years, has been brutally torn open by a mysterious and unstoppable dark energy. Countless ancient demonic dragons, tainted by the breath of the abyssal origin, are desperately swarming out of the forbidden zone, flooding forth like a torrential cascade. The iron defense line that the Great Xia Empire prided itself upon has collapsed in an instant. The army has suffered countless casualties. Blood flows like a river, and the endless horde of demonic dragons is marching frantically toward the imperial capital." Upon hearing these dire words regarding the invasion, Lu Ruyan suddenly gripped the blue dragon gold seal, symbol of supreme power, in her hand. That was the terrifying forbidden zone that even in the peak of her previous life, she dared not set foot in lightly. The bloodthirsty demonic dragons sealed within, each possessed power capable of destroying heaven and earth, far beyond the imagination of ordinary mortals, combined with fearsome physical forms and supreme dark magic. Moreover, there were now countless numbers of them swarming out at once, darkening the skies and covering the earth. All the generals and ministers in the imperial court turned deathly pale from terror. Unable to stand steadily, the entire assembly plunged into total chaos. They were like headless flies, utterly clueless on how to organize the army to respond. As I sat to the side, hearing such tantalizing terms as 10,000 dragon abyss and ancient black demonic dragons, deep within my eyes, I could not suppress the sudden flash of brilliant star-like blue light. I bolted upright, casting the pile of bland, trivial snacks. I sat up, overcome with excitement, a clear thread of saliva leaking from the corner of my mouth, a truly unrefined display born of intense hunger. I could not help but laugh maniacally in my heart. I was just worrying this morning about finding something delicious to satisfy my cravings. This is truly a providential gift. It is as if one were nodding off, and someone immediately provided a soft pillow, the essence and flesh-blood energy of the ancient abyssal demonic dragons. This is an absolute superlative tonic. Rare top-tier ingredients for cooking that cannot be found elsewhere. If I could drain the entire abyss of those black dragons in one gulp, then the 11th supreme evolution that I have awaited day and night would finally be within reach. Without the slightest hesitation, I stood up. I leaped down from the high platform, landing with a heavy thud, and strode quickly toward the border-guarding prince, who was drenched in cold sweat, utterly broken, and covered in blood. In a state of extreme exhilaration, I grabbed the collar of his tattered, blood-soaked robes with one hand, hoisted him off the ground, my eyes burning with an intense fervor, and stared fixedly into his trembling face, demanding urgently, "You spoke of the Wanlong Tong Yuan, that swarms of those beastly creatures are flying about everywhere? Are they massive in size? Do they possess an abundance of dragon scales? Is the flesh beneath their hide succulent and fatty?" The unfortunate prince, already terrified by my crazed expression, felt his mind completely succumb to shock. He stuttered and trembled, his body racking with tremors as he recalled the hellish scene of the city walls collapsing. With tears streaming down his face, he stammered, "Those demon dragons are colossal and terrifying, like moving mountains. A single breath of their black volcanic fire is enough to incinerate a prosperous city of millions in an instant. That power is absolute and insurmountable. It is a calamity that humanity is powerless to resist." Upon hearing this description, I was filled with immense joy and fully satisfied, released my grip, casting him aside. I turned to face Lu Ruyan, who sat upon the dragon throne, contemplating the situation, and let out a resounding crystalline whistle. With an air of arrogant dominance, I waved my hand emphatically at her, and proclaimed in a loud voice, "Little lady, stop sitting there lost in thought. Why waste your time with those useless memorials? Quickly, take your storage ring and pack your belongings. This master shall now take you beyond the great wall of wind and snow to feast upon the finest, most exquisite roasted dragon." Once I had signaled to Lu Ruyan, she stood up in perfect accord, carelessly tossing the jade dragon seal onto the table. Lu Ruyan declared coldly to the gathered civil and military officials, "All of you shall remain in the capital and keep to yourselves. Anyone who dares to stir up trouble shall have their entire clan executed to the 9th degree." She then stepped to my side and skillfully produced several dozen high-grade storage rings. A smile of breathtaking beauty bloomed at the corners of Lu Ruyan's lips. Lu Ruyan whispered, "Let us depart to a place of solitude," and I reached out to wrap my arm around her slender waist. The void teleportation technique was instantly activated. The wind and snow in the far north were as sharp as razors, yet they were drawn toward the thick, roiling aura of the black dragon. As we stepped out of the void tunnel, we were met with a sight that sent a numbing chill through our scalps. The sky was thick with massive black shadows. Tens of thousands of ancient demon dragons obscured the heavens entirely. Their gargantuan leathery wings beat fiercely against the void. The underground defense of Beijing had long since been reduced to a pile of rubble. Countless soldiers looked up at the sky in despair, led by a 9th-stage peak Black Dragon King, who was arrogantly roaring in the air. The Black Dragon King bellowed, declaring that all humans were merely food, and today the Dragon Clan would ensure the total annihilation of the human race. Upon hearing these words, the soldiers below were drained of all color in their faces. But hearing such nonsense from this old black dragon, I could not help myself and let out a laugh. The sound of my laughter rang out with startling abruptness across the battlefield. The gazes of all the demonic dragons were instantly locked onto me. The Black Dragon King exhaled 2 plumes of pitch-black hellfire from his nostrils. The Black Dragon King roared in fury, demanding, "What kind of insignificant ant dares to mock the Dragon Clan?" I stretched my limbs, the joints of my body popping with a resonant cracking sound. While loosening up my body, I retorted with mockery. I shouted, "You old lizard, stop your rambling. Today, all of you winged, 4-legged snakes will serve as a premier feast on my table." As soon as the words left my lips, I gave him no chance to react. The pressure of the Time God realm was unleashed to its fullest extent. I immediately activated the giant form of light. In an instant, my body expanded to 10,000 meters, towering over 10 great mountains combined. At the same time, I suddenly opened my maw wide as an abyss, and my god-tier passive ability, Devour Heaven and Earth, erupted at maximum output. I let out a thunderous roar. "Get into the bowl, all of you." A terrifying, irresistible gravitational force suddenly manifested in the void. The space across the entire northern region began to collapse under the strain. The arrogant, ancient demonic dragons flying in the sky were instantly like swarms of flies caught in a high-powered pump. They could not control their momentum and were pulled uncontrollably toward my mouth. The Black Dragon King was so terrified that his eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. He flapped his wings frantically, desperate to escape the pull of this suction. The Black Dragon King shrieked in terror. What kind of monster is this? How could he possibly devour even the void itself? I gave a cold, dismissive laugh, paying no heed to his mounting despair, and with a powerful inhalation, I pulled him directly into my jaws first. With a crisp, sharp sound, my upper and lower jaw, a dragon orb containing energy of the purest darkness detonated, releasing a fragrance strangely sweet and rich. Ding. Devoured Peak Stage Black Dragon King 9 Zhang Long. Evolution points increased by 100,000. Exilus flesh is truly of premium quality. I roared toward the heavens, my heart surging with exhilaration. The army of 10,000 mosquitoes behind me was unleashed in its entirety. Countless mosquito clones, each possessing 5th rank strength, transformed into a black meat grinder vortex, sweeping across the entire battlefield. Those massive magic dragons had no time to resist. My swarm descended upon their bodies, driving their stingers deep with savage frenzy. The sound of blood being drained echoed to the highest heavens, as dragon carcasses, withered and gaunt, plummeted from the sky. Boom. Ding. Devoured Magic Dragon, 8 Zhang Long. Evolution points increased by 50,000. Ding. Devoured Flying Dragon, 7 Zhang Long. Evolution points increased by 30,000. The colossal essence and blood of the ancient dragon race flooded into my body with wild abandon. My stagnant evolution bar began to climb at a dizzying pace. In less than half an hour, the army of 100,000 magic dragons, a force that struck terror into the hearts of all, was entirely consumed, brought to the brink of extinction. Down below, Lu Ruyan gathered dragon scales and bones until her hands grew weary. Her dozens of top-tier storage rings were already filled to the brim. Just as I prepared to clear the remnants of the battle, a dragon's roar echoed from the deepest reaches of the 10,000 dragon abyss, shattering the very void. An aura of terrifying majesty, far exceeding that of a Tenzang half-step divine realm expert, descended upon us. The sky instantly bled into a deep crimson red. An ancient dragon ancestor, spanning over 100,000 meters in length, crawled forth from the depths of the abyss. Its massive frame was covered in bone spikes and dark red inverted scales, and with every breath, it threatened to collapse the very laws of heaven and earth. Gazing upon the carpet of its slaughtered descendants, the ancient dragon ancestor fell into an unbridled primal rage. It unleashed a maddening roar that threatened to shatter the soul itself. I will tear your soul from your body and cast it into the 9 nether ghost fires to burn for eternity. Immediately after, it opened a maw so vast it could swallow a planet, and spewed a beam of ultimate purple light, capable of destroying heaven and earth, directed straight at me. Faced with this supreme strike that far surpassed the divine realm, the human soldiers below squeezed their eyes shut in terror, but my own eyes burned with a proud, excited glint of azure light. This was the final premium ingredient I had been waiting for. Far from evading, I launched myself directly into the path of that purple light. Once again, I activated Universal Spirit Infusion and Heaven-Devouring Lightning. I let out a defiant roar. My thanks to you, brother, for this exquisite refreshment. That stream of violet light, capable of piercing the very galaxy, was swallowed whole by me, as easily as slurping a noodle. The primordial dragon ancestor, witnessing his most powerful attack being devoured, froze in place, his massive form paralyzed with disbelief. The primordial dragon ancestor shrieked in terror. This is absolutely impossible. He turned to flee, attempting to retreat into the abyss. But how could I allow this cooked duck to fly away? A burst of light-speed momentum erupted from my back, and in a heartbeat I descended upon his crown. My supermassive vortex, capable of piercing through dimensions, lunged forward aggressively, plunging deep into his cavernous maw, aiming straight for his heart to drain him dry. Yield your essence to me. The primordial dragon ancestor let out a cry of boundless, wretched agony. Writhing in madness, his 100,000-meter-long body struggling to break free, but I clung to him, refusing to let go, much like a whale gulping down a spring, frantically draining every drop of his primordial strength. 10 minutes later, this primordial divine dragon, which had existed for 1,000,000 years, was reduced to a gargantuan, desiccated skeleton. An unprecedented system notification thundered in my ears. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring an 11th rank primordial god-level dragon. Requirement for evolving into a creator god has been met. Final advancement to the 11th rank is now underway. This ultimate sublimation. A pillar of radiant, kaleidoscopic light pierced the entire universe, enveloping my body. I could feel my level of existence shattering every shackle and restraint. Not only could I command all energy and matter, but time and space themselves shifted at the mere flick of my finger. I stepped gracefully from the pillar of light, my form restored to a perfect, slender human silhouette. Yet, as I stood there casually, the laws of the world itself knelt in submission, bowing before me. I had completed a spectacular ascent, rising from a lowly insect to the supreme omnipotent creator of the universe. Lu Ruyan transformed into a streak of light, appearing at my side. Looking upon my peerless divine form, her eyes were filled with profound adoration and boundless pride. Lu Ruyan whispered to me, "The great Xia Empire is now unrivaled beneath the heavens. No existence in this world can threaten us any longer." I smiled, pulling her close, and leaned in to press a gentle kiss upon the forehead of this peerless empress. I cast a sweeping gaze toward the infinite void beyond, where the brilliant sea of stars beckoned. I let out a wild, arrogant laugh and spoke clearly to her. After all, I have already feasted upon every ingredient this world had to offer. So tomorrow we shall pack our belongings and venture into another universe to continue our harvest, for in that vast sea of stars lie endless